Alright, it is release day for the Chaos Dwarfs, and also the release of the patch notes. I was kind of expecting them to come out a day earlier than the release. That, I believe, is usually the pattern with Total War. I guess I don't have that much history with the series beyond Total War Warhammer, so I wouldn't know. Maybe that is the usual. Nonetheless, the patch notes here for Update 3.0, I want to look them over real quick, talk about them. I haven't seen them yet. I'm looking at them with fresh eyes, aside from I have heard about... Well, obviously there's a couple big things that we've seen in the Chaos Dwarf trailers. Like, now you can preview landmarks, you can preview the units that get upgraded by a given skill in the skill tree. All that stuff gets previewed, which all sounds very, very nice. And other than that, the only thing I've heard is looking in on the Discord for the Total War modders. Apparently, they made it where all rights are available to the Warhammer 2 races from turn 1. Which sounds really spooky. Because you gotta keep in mind, like, it's funny for the Vampire Coast or the Tomb Kings, because you can get access to your crazy artillery unit from turn 1. But for the Lizard Men, that is an instant, like, if you can get the money for it, because I believe it is a pretty expensive right, that is a, within the first 10 turns, full stack of dinosaurs. Which is absurd, and would let you roll over a lot of the map. So, oh boy, let's see if that was an accident or intentional. Nonetheless, Update 3.0, here we go. Highlights. Chaos Dwarfs, Mirror of Madness, Ulrika Magdova, who currently Total War Access is not working at the moment. Too many people probably trying to get download tickets, so can't access Ulrika Magdova. You can randomize which race and Legendary Lord you play on the Legendary Lord selection menu. That's nice. New additions to tooltips, yes. Line of sight adjustments, I have heard about this. I've heard that guns are behaving a lot better. And balance changes to Bretonnia, the Dark Elves, Cathay, and the Greenskins. Yeah, I would say all of those probably needed those balance changes. I'm not so sure about the Dark Elves. I only put in a little bit of time with them in Immortal Empire, so I can't really say with them. Forge of the Chaos Dwarfs campaign pack. I know what this is. Hang on. Yeah, Mirror of Madness, Ulrika Magdova. I don't need to look at these. Okay, and there we go. Lord randomization. Nice close-up on Zoltan's beautiful mug. Okay. Stability and performance. FPS drops when the province tab is open should no longer happen. Did they finally fix that weird bug where there was some weird bug with the province tab where it was like looking through the entirety of the game's files rather than going straight where it needed to, something like that. There was a mod that fixed it, and I guess they implemented that. Fixed an issue which caused modded and custom characters to crash the game when opening the Recruit Lord Hero UI. Is that the bug where if you save a custom Lord... Yeah, it must be something like that, because I had that bug. I downloaded the OVN Albion mod, and I, just for a laugh, I realized while I was playing the Albion mod that I'd never messed with the custom character saving mechanic, so I saved a Lord as Albion. And then, about a week later or two, probably would have been the release of some update of some kind. So, all the mods needed updated. So I turned off the Albion mod just for while the game was being updated. And then the game wouldn't launch for me. It was just crashing. Or something like that. It was crashing either on launch or on campaign startup, something like that. And it was because I had saved a modded character as a custom character save, and then unloaded the mod. So I guess the game just crashed upon trying to reference the file for a Lord type that did not exist. So it's nice to know that they figured out some kind of thing for that. It should just probably delete it, or give you a pop-up saying no. Fix the soft luck when trying to declare war on a player faction with which you have pending diplomatic negotiation. Not seeing that one. A potential crash when going into battle due to the cleanup of military forces when leaving the campaign has been fixed. Fixed an internal crash of when Gotrek was killed at an opportune time, causing a memory access issue. The crash that would occur when siege towers dock on adjacent wall pieces which are perpendicular to each other has been fixed. I've not even heard about that one. and fixed the crash that would occur when the game held data for province governorship for factions that did not own the province capital. Alright, general updates. You can now preview the landmark buildings you'll get access to in a settlement by hovering over it. That's really nice, because it's been for years now that it was just kind of annoying looking at, okay, I'm playing Karl Franz. I can see that the Empire has landmarks in Middenheim. I don't own Middenheim. I want to know how good those landmarks are before I make the dedicated choice of, do I want to go to war with whoever owns Middenheim right now, which is probably Festus. Do I want to go to war with Festus right now for Middenheim for the sake of that one landmark? Is that one landmark good enough to go to war for? And now you can preview it and see just how good the landmark is and see just how important it is. So that is very, very nice. That's also going to make it a lot easier to just check out when a mod has a bunch of landmarks. Because you can just, put in the console commands, turn off Fog of War code. Why am I forgetting? Console command, there you go. The console command for turn off Fog of War, and just mouse around the map, mousing over landmarks and seeing what each of the landmarks do. So that's a very nice convenience thing for everyone. New pack file limit that increases the number of mods that can be hypothetically run simultaneously, barring any cross-mod issues. That's been an issue for a lot of people. Though, to my understanding, the issue came in around like 170 mods. And when you get up to that amount, unless they're unit mods or something like that, you're just kind of bound to introduce crazy instability. Added a new panel that allows you to search for certain items on the campaign map. Physical items, as in settlements, provinces, factions, and characters, and landmarks/resources. Okay, I'd heard about the settlements, provinces, factions, and characters thing, but that wasn't going to be too useful to me, because I am a huge nerd and have been playing this game for way too long, so I know where everybody is and where everything is. I do not know the landmarks or resources, though. Or at the very least, I don't know the resources. Yeah, there's plenty of landmarks I don't know on the map either. But that resources one, that is really nice, especially for the Tomb Kings, since they have a lot of stuff that's locked behind resources, and the Dwarfs as well, because the Tomb Kings have the Mortuary Cult, and the Dwarfs have the Runic Forge, both of which have options that are locked behind resources, and so does the High Elf Tech Tree. So all three of those guys will really benefit from that. And really, just about any of the races will benefit from just going in and typing in gold, because that's a high money maker for everyone. Gems make a lot of money for a lot of races. Crystals, I don't know what... They're called gems, aren't they? I think so. Gems make a lot of money for a lot of races, but I think it's more so the Dwarfs with that. Multiple buildings that were incorrectly marked as destructible have been updated game-wide, including those found within maps for the Vampire Counts, Dwarfs, Dark Elves, and more. I don't know what that means. Multiple buildings that were incorrectly marked as destructible. I don't know what that means. I don't get it. Okay. Campaign map battle selection for both the Realm of Chaos and Immortal Empire's campaign maps updated to ensure that the correct battle tiles are displayed. Don't know that one either. Oh boy. Increase the effect of the A Stranger Comes event for all Order factions. That's the one where you get money for spreading a little bit of chaos corruption, right? I'm not for certain. New regions and provinces added both Realm of Chaos and Immortal Empires. And the Earth's plates have shifted, causing some to find a new home elsewhere. Explore the lands and discover new settlements, regions, and conquer them if you wish. The extent of that, I believe, was just that they added a little bit more onto the Darklands, like the Plain of Zar no longer. There was a bit of a goofy thing where the Plain of Zar is supposed to be that kind of crater, that horribly industrialized crater in the eastern side of the Darklands, where Zarnagrund is. It's supposed to be the most heavily populated corner of the Dark Elf not Dark Elves, Chaos Dwarf Empire. And so you would expect there to be more than one settlement there. Of course, there's going to be the big one, Zarnagrund, but there should probably be 2 or 3 other settlements in the plain. And no, at launch, the Darklands only had Zarnagrund there, and what else they had was outside the Plain of Zar, the little crater. And now they've added 2 settlements there, so that's very, very nice. They added a little bit more to the Darklands, and I believe they also shifted the province borders in the Mountains of Morn to make it so that Greasus now starts in his home and can still, pretty easily carve a route through his first province. Alongside the additions and relocations, several regions have had their borders adjusted, and a new sea lane has been added between the River Ruin and the Frozen Sea, which is, of course, the sea route that the Chaos Dwarfs use in the lore. They have carved out a underground sea, because the River Ruin runs from the Skull Lands up in the Northern Darklands all the way down to the Sea of Dread, which is, for all intents and purposes, the real-world Indian Sea. They just don't call it the Indic Sea, because Games Workshop didn't get lazy on that one, I guess. The Chaos Dwarfs then carved a tunnel going from the River Ruins, where it comes down from the mountains up near the Skull Lands. They carved a tunnel going from there, a canal going from there, an underground canal, going from there to the, northeast of Norska. That's also a big change if you have the Norse Dwarf mod, because that tremendously expands your movement options. As the Norse Dwarfs, you could probably run a goofy campaign idea of picking up sticks and leaving. That would be a weird idea for a campaign for the Norse Dwarfs, but nonetheless, you could do it. Similarly, though, there is actually another dwarf instance of a underground canal very close. Because, like I said, the Norse Dwarfs built the, I want to say it's called the Ungravalk, but I could be wrong. A underground canal, an underground river, that they carved out from the far northeast end of Norska, in the Norse Dwarf realms, under Sjöktraken, I'm not sure how you're supposed to pronounce that. Which is a settlement on the Immortal Empire's map already, and it goes all the way to the other side into the Sea of Claws on the west coast of Kislev, which is also presumably a lot of the means by which the Norse Dwarfs are able to maintain some degree of contact with the rest of the world. Though the regular dwarfs still think the Norse Dwarfs are a bunch of weirdos. Missions that require the taking of specific regions now complete instantly rather than the start of your next turn. That's nice. Fixed various land battle maps to prevent reinforcements arriving in inaccessible areas. I've not had that happen, but I've seen a screenshot of an army getting stuck in like a corner of the map that should be inaccessible. Fixed an issue where sailing into 2 sea encounters would sometimes result in the second not working correctly. Not seen that, but it's nice. Updated various choke point areas on the campaign map to correctly load into ambush battles. That's nice. Allied recruitment will now take into account the military force bonus values. Oh, really? It didn't? Huh. That's another thing that, unfortunately, was kind of nerfing Allied recruitment. Allied recruitment is a really cool mechanic, and I'm hoping... The Creative Assembly did say they intend on changing the skill trees for Lords, so that now, rather than buffing specific units, they'll buff general types of units. They said that a while ago, though, and that was before they made it where now you can see what specific types of units a skill buffs in the skill tree. So they probably changed plans, because that did seem like it might get a bit OP with some of the potential Allied recruitment possibilities. Allied recruitment is a really difficult thing to balance, and it's one of those things that does make me upset about the way Total War works, where you need to maximize efficiency in your armies, because Allied recruitment is only really then viable with the very strongest of units that you can recruit from other nations. Because otherwise, it's not getting the benefits of your research tree or skill tree. So, I don't know. Kataf did make it, though, where it's not the case necessarily for his Southern Realms mod, it seemed. He applied very general buffs. I'm not for certain, though. Walled settlement battles and battles in general have received some improvements in the form of AI adjustments. AI units will no longer double back on an approaching entry point and obstruct artillery units in an attempt to reform themselves. Updated how attacking AI unit groups are distributed in walled settlements battles, better to take advantage of units capable of assaulting gates. Yeah, gate assaults seemed a lot stronger against the AI in Warhammer 3, at least the time that I've been playing. I mean, it helps. I don't think the gate bug comes on as strong in Warhammer 3 as it did in Warhammer 2. If it's there at all, I haven't seen it. It could still be there, because I didn't see the gate bug near as often as a lot of other people did. But, it's really noticeable that direct gate assaults became a lot better, depending on what race you're playing. Obviously, there are some races like the Skaven where it would be garbage, because your primary advantage is your firepower and your magic and your hard-hitting units like, say, the Plague Monks that don't really enjoy being blobbed up. But if you're playing most any of the Chaos factions, or really anyone that's that heavy duty in melee and doesn't mind a good schmoz, then attacking the gate was great. Especially because the AI would just haplessly throw their units onto the big blob of units you'd formed at their gate. Fixed an issue in siege battles where attacking AI artillery units continued moving forward when they should remain stationary to fire. Artillery units targeting breaches will now more reliably reposition if they cannot successfully fire at a target. Oh, that's nice. AI units will be less likely to blob together and will instead remain coordinated upon entering a walled settlement. I'm sure that's important, but how often do any of us play siege defense? Never. Because the AI only ever attacks you when it has the explicit, when it's extraordinarily difficult to win the siege defense. And I'm sure there are some people who can pull off, who can take one Bretonnian peasant mob and beat an army of 20 Chaos Warriors chosen with it, because there are exploits and cheeses for these things. But for a lot of people, you are never, ever, ever going to play a siege defense battle in Total War Warhammer, because the AI is programmed to only ever do a siege attack when it has the overwhelming advantage, the unbeatable for most players advantage. So that's nice to see a fix for that. At the same time, I was not aware it was an issue, and I don't think I'll see the fix either unless they change the AI aggression priorities. Fixed cases where the AI would think its units were at max health when they were not. Did not know that was a thing. That's funny. Fixed an issue where a group of units would stop to brace instead of charging. Not seen that, but that does sound annoying. Fixed an issue in settlement battles where mounted Lord AI would become indecisive and get stuck moving back and forth. I think I have seen that. That was a little goofy. In settlement battles, improvements have been made to the AI unit's priority analysis of areas within a settlement. This makes AI units more reliably prioritize capturing and recapturing capture points. It is kind of annoying that capture points are not really a relevant thing in settlement battles right now. They were such a big part of the changes to settlement battles, but it still kind of feels like you're winning the siege at the walls. Which is a change that needs to be made to the AI for sieges, because walls in Total War Warhammer just aren't very good. And unless some changes are made to walls to make them better, which I can't see happening, because Crave Assembly, I think, is very apprehensive about changing the siege mechanic. For whatever reason, they are still really happy with some general patterns of the siege gameplay design that I am not fond of. And I always say this whenever I vocalize my disagreement with Crave Assembly's philosophy on siege design. I'm sure they have their reasons. I'm still inclined somewhat to the idea that there's a distinct possibility that Crave Assembly intends for sieges to be more playable in online multiplayer. And so that's why they do things like, for instance, having towers on the walls with ludicrously long range, or walls that aren't really that defensively valuable aside from the towers they have attached, to try and urge a very fast siege, which is, of course, much more exciting in online multiplayer, hypothetically, than a siege where you sit outside and bombard the walls and just slowly tear down the enemy's defenders with magic and artillery. And similarly, the defenders don't get that impressive of tools either, especially once you get in the city and, the barricades take no damage. Well, buildable towers are nuts. Yeah, it needs to be said that there are a couple mods I consider mandatory to really have fun with Total War Warhammer. And two of the big mods that I always make sure to have on, and thankfully neither of them are very heavy mods, so they're both probably already updated, or it doesn't even matter if they are updated, because they're messing with values that Crave Assembly doesn't mess with. But two mods. Reduced tower range, no buildable towers. I cannot stand buildable towers. I cannot stand tower walls, or wall towers. I don't want to call them siege towers, because that's incorrect, but I can't stand that towers invalidate artillery. I can't stand that towers force you to go for a rush playstyle regardless of which race you're playing. Because rushing a settlement as Beastmen, Khorne, Warriors of Chaos without a Hell Cannon, those all make sense. Rushing the walls as the Empire, or the Dwarfs, or the Vampire Coast, or Skaven, all of whom have fantastic artillery and ranged setups. And out of them, the dwarfs and Skaven in particular are supposed to be siege specialists. It just feels so goofy. Okay. Fixed an issue in settlement battles where a defending AI unit becomes idle after morale breaks and flees instead of re-engaging with the player units. Units would remain hidden from the player, leading to the player losing the battle due to time running out. I've not run into that bug, but that sounds like a pain. Fixed issue where AI would assign multiple battering rams to the same gate assault group, leading to the additional battering rams being abandoned. Okay, well the first joke is obviously how silly that is on its face. The second joke is the idea of the AI using battering rams at all. Because battering rams are absolutely terrible unless you are just looking for the quickest possible way to siege a settlement and your lord doesn't have siege attacker. Because battering rams are garbage, they are trash, they are awful. I do not know what Creative Assembly's intention is with the battering ram other than just being a mandatory one-turn build to siege. Because you are 100% better off just sending off any unit or all of your units to break down the gate. I love, as a Bretonia, I love taking a couple peasant mob and just sending them to break down the gates. I love spreading peasant mobs around the map and using them to open all of the gates. Because as Bretonia, you're a very cavalry-heavy army, and in a siege, cavalry-heavy armies really benefit from having as many open doors and avenues as possible. So, as Bretonia, I love to open all the enemy gates so that I can get in there from any angle. And battering rams are trash. They do the same job more slowly, and the unit manning the battering ram is going to take more damage because they have to walk up to the gate instead of run. Like, almost all tests you can run with this sort of thing, unless you've got a very low entity unit, like, let's say, Depth Guard. Almost all tests you can run with this sort of thing, the unit will break the unit by itself will break the gate faster than it would with a battering ram. At least partially because even though the unit itself doesn't do as much damage to the gate as the battering ram does, the battering ram just takes so long to get there. And I find it bizarre that there aren't really any mods that mess with the battering ram either, though I assume maybe it's something that's hard-coded. Maybe a lot of the siege stuff is hard-coded, because, I don't know. Sieges still need a lot of work, but I say this every time. They are in a much better place than they were in Warhammer 2. I know there are some people that believe the Warhammer 2 sieges were better because they were quicker and because they were used to them. But no, Warhammer 2 sieges were absolute trash. It was a pain that you could not auto-resolve them most of the time because they were not fun, they were annoying. Even there was no battling within the city whatsoever, but the walls still weren't valuable enough to hold. The city towers, oh, I hated Warhammer 2 sieges. Warhammer 3 sieges are still fun, but they have a lot of issues. It's a difference. Warhammer 2 sieges weren't fun at all, and it had the same issues. Warhammer 3 sieges solve a lot of Warhammer 2's issues, but don't solve them all. There's a lot that are still there. Updated Outflank AI to handle flying units better. The AI still acts a little funky with flying units. You can mess up the enemy's formation just by telling a flying unit to hover above the enemy. It's especially funny to do that as, for instance, vampire counts. Because you can really mess with those heavy defensive and ranged heavy formations that are such a pain as the vampire counts by just floating a unit of fell bats above their heads. In settlement battles, when the attacking army is AI controlled, okay, so this is already something we're not going to see, it'll more consistently deploy a nearby reinforcement's arrival location and wait for reinforcements before proceeding. Improved logic in determining how many breaches the AI will attempt to create before waiting units begin entering settlements. This will reduce the likelihood of AI units remaining idle outside settlements. Fixed an issue where AI units assaulting a settlement gate would abandon the assault, leaving units with no other means of entering the settlement stranded outside for the duration of the battle. That's also funny. Okay. It sounds like there were a bunch of weird AI bugs with siege attacking from the AI. And it is no wonder that it took over a year for people to find these bugs, considering that nobody ever gets to play siege defense against the AI. Dev note, while it is true that Skaven aren't known for caring about the lives of their subordinates, war losses are an important part of the peace evaluation calculation, and it was detrimental for them to ignore them. Skaven leaders, of course, do care about losing battles, as such a thing is clearly evidence of plots against them. Nice little bit of lore there. Okay, so while it is true that Skaven aren't known for carrying war losses are an important part of the piece. Okay, I don't. That must be a commentary on the campaign AI. Adjusted the strategic threat calculations for immortal empires. Direct actions against a faction are now much more important in that calculation, and the importance of distance scaling has been increased, improving the way AI will select the most relevant threats. Is that a way? Is that them saying they're going to try and deal with the thing of factions that are way far away from you trying to declare war on you? Because right now the AI in campaign is way too quick to declare war, but also way too slow to actually attack. And right now, the take I've seen from a lot of people has been that right now it feels like Crib Assembly deliberately paced the campaign to make it feel like you are constantly in aggressive warfare. And that is not as exciting or fun a gameplay scheme as Crib Assembly thinks. And I generally agree with that. I think it does feel a lot like, almost like, I don't think there's a system in game. I would have heard about it by now if there was, I would think. I don't think there's a system in game for player has finished war with the Strigoi dynasty, so let's have the Bretonnian Crusader guys declare war on the player. I don't think there's a system in place for that, but it definitely feels like right now the AI aggression is tuned up way higher than it should be to try and force the player into a state of constant warfare rather than the ebb and flow, push and pull, exciting times, calm times, balance that a lot of Total War games have gone with and been very successful with. I think that the idea that you need to have constant exciting gameplay is a very incorrect idea for any game, including Total War. There needs to be up and down, ebb and flow, push and pull. You get the idea. Further tweaks have been made to AI's recruitment priorities to favor higher value units. Additionally, the AI will place more weight on building a recruitment building if they are without one. Okay, it's nice to see them put more weight on recruitment buildings, because it's annoying seeing the AI build public order buildings in every damn settlement. But at the same time, I think I've said before, I'm not a fan of doom stacking, so it kind of bugs me to see the AI focus on higher tier units the same way most players do. But that's the reason I always download the Tabletop Caps mod. Fixed various cases of the AI trying to enter stances which were invalid, leading to it trying to perform moves which were invalid. Curious. Fixed the AI control option for allied armies not showing when being attacked by an enemy. Fixed cases of the AI trying to apply commandments to provinces that it didn't own. That's pretty funny. Fixed a bug which meant that the AI became less, as opposed to more, likely to generate a peace deal the further away the target was. Oh, that's annoying. Okay, that explains a lot, though. I mean, peace deals, the AI hates peace deals in general, and that's a real pain. That's why there's a variety of mods that fix that. One of them being Bring the Boys Home, which is a fun mod, which is a nice little mod that makes it so that not every war is a forever war. You know, it's the world of Warhammer Fantasy, right? And a lot of people are going to come at it from the perspective of Warhammer 40k, which in Warhammer 40k is forever war with everyone who looks even mildly different than you. Warhammer Fantasy, that is not the case. War and peace deals happen. Lots of peace happens. Lots of alliances happen. Lots of uneasy pieces happen. The Empire, various parts of the Empire have been at war with dwarf kingdoms before, and then reached peace afterwards. Bretonia's had plenty of feuds with the Wood Elves in the past, and reached peace afterwards, and so on. You get the idea. So this whole idea of, it's not called Total Peace Hammer. Like, come on, man. There we go. All factions now care about their strategic situation when generating a war declaration goal. Is that dealing with AI that are being... Because I have noticed that AI that are really weak and being attacked by another faction will nonetheless declare war on you, even though they have no real means of going to war with you. So if that's a fix for that, that'd be nice. Improved AI performance in the first turn of the game. Minor AI factions should now be more accepting of vassalization. That's good, because the vassalization mechanic was only really a thing for vampire counts or Slaanesh. Fix some case or Chaos Warriors. Fix some cases where the AI attempting to calculate the strength of a force was resulting in incorrect behavior. Reduce the distance required for the maximum distance modifiers to be applied in both deal generation and deal evaluation. Okay, so it's going to be harder to get, for instance, Cathay to agree to any diplomatic deals if you're in the old world. War declaration on a faction of the same subculture is now less likely for High Elf, Empire, and Lizardmen factions. Only the major ones for the High Elf is in the Empire, though. I don't know, has that been a particular problem? Because only 2 of the Empire major factions are that close. I don't think I've ever noticed Karl Franz and Balthazar Gelt declaring war on each other. They always have bigger problems with their neighbors. Lizardmen not declaring war on each other makes sense. All factions now consider war losses when evaluating a peace deal. Previously, Skaven, Dwarfs, and Tomb Kings were not. Huh. I guess that makes sense. It does seem like war losses isn't nearly as important to determining peace deals as it should be, though. I just always remember, the fondest experience I have had with diplomacy in Total War is Three Kingdoms. Which, of course, is not a controversial thing to say. Everyone agrees Total War Three Kingdoms has the best diplomacy. The diplomatic game in Total War Three Kingdoms feels like it's a game unto itself. It doesn't feel like a series of buttons you need to hit to just, I don't know, cover your borders, but nothing else. Peace deals were a real thing in Three Kingdoms. And I can fondly remember having very large-scale wars where I beat the AI in a few major battles, took a few major cities, but not the meat of their empire, just a few important battles and cities. And I got a solid peace deal, and I wanted the peace deal because I didn't want to be investing money into military at the time. I wanted to invest money into upgrading my cities. And Total War Warhammer, I feel the game would be a lot more nuanced if peace was more of an option at the end of after a few big battles in a war. And that would help to also limit, if peace deals were more viable, that would help to limit snowballing. Because that is one of the big issues that Total War Warhammer has always had, which is snowballing. And a lot of the times, you snowball rapidly because the AI will have 8 million factions declare war on you, and you have an extremely stressful time for a few turns of trying to beat, 10 armies with 1 army, or something like that, though that happens a lot in Total War Warhammer, especially in the quest battles, which is why I'm not personally fond of them. I know it makes me a coward or bad at the game, just deal with it. And then after you beat the, 9 armies, you then just kind of clean through their lands, and suddenly you've snowballed, and you're really early in the game to have snowballed. If peace deals were more viable, if the AI was less likely to declare war just for the sake of declaring war, just because they think the player's going to get bored, then that would be one thing that would perhaps not only make the early game less stressful, and thus less, apprehensive for new players, but also less unapproachable for new players. But that would also make it so even the veteran players who are good at this don't snowball so rapidly from having to eat enemy territory because they know that enemy, even if they have literally no units to defend themselves with, will never agree to a peace deal. Line of sight has been an overall sticking point in Warhammer 3's battle responsiveness, and we're making some adjustments with Update 3.0. As you'll see below, many of the issues came from various objects and props in the environment, which would sometimes lead to units attempting to walk through a destructible object rather than shoot over it. We're continuing to iterate this work, but please keep the feedback coming in as we continue to tweak the many, many facets that can prevent your units from firing when they should. The objects that were destructible and were blocking line of sight were Dark Elf lampposts, Bretonnian and Cathayan market stalls, tents, tables, and other destructible assets, Ogre Kingdom's bones and carts, several constructible towers on the Shenyang map, tiny destructible pieces of terrain game-wide that were especially detrimental to gunpowder units, wall collision on dwarf maps, updated the building collision of platform barricades to allow greater line of sight and firing for docked missile units, and updated and corrected the logic on various buildings to prevent artillery from targeting them across battle maps game-wide. Okay, now I know what that means by destructible objects. I was thinking things that were larger than that. I was thinking, actual buildings. I was confused for a bit, because Total War Warhammer has never had destructible buildings. And that's a little bit of a Three Kingdoms or even Medieval 2 feature. But no, that makes more sense if it's just, the little lampposts. Or in the Empire, when you're playing an Empire Siege map, you always see there are so many market stalls that have balloons stuck on, and you can tell an army is moving through a city, an Empire city, because you just see lots of balloons going up throughout the air. So it's nice to know that was apparently an issue in sieges. I'll admit I never had any particular line of sight issues in sieges, but I didn't siege that many Dark Elf, Bretonnia, or Cathay settlements. Well, no, I probably sieged a lot of Cathay settlements, but I never sieged that many Dark Elf or Bretonnia settlements. So that's funny. That's good to know, I guess. It's good to have it fixed. Alright. Balance. Okay. Fix some general inconsistencies with units having or not having the siege attack or tribute. Fix the Lore of Wild spell Mantle of Gorok not being able to be overcasted via campaign skill trees. With the Chaos Dwarfs here, we are adamant about improving the quality of life of some other factions who have been struggling from the outset. Therefore, some adjustments have been made to their starting positions or the strength of nearby settlements to allow them to take a second settlement on their first turn, bringing them in line with the other factions of the Immortal Empires. Zhao Ming? Zhao Ming doesn't have a difficult early game. I mean, he will someday, because they're going to add more Legendary Lords into Cathay that will be a problem for him. But Zhao Ming, I thought, has one of the easiest campaigns. No, the easiest campaign in Total War Warhammer 3, barring Ikit Claw, because Ikit Claw is his own special thing with his weird, cheap DLC bullshit. Grease's Goldtooth, yeah, they rearranged the province in his favor. Tehenoin, Krokgar, Torox, Snikch, Helmengorst, and Fey Enchantress. I actually haven't played any of these Legendary Lords except Zhao Ming yet. In Immortal Empires, I did beat Realm of Chaos with Grease's Goldtooth, but obviously that's different. And there's been some changes to the Winds of Magic costs on various spells. Usurian's Incantation of Vengeance. Vaingeist's Revenge has been nerfed by increasing the cost. Vaingeist's Revenge is one spell that just always seems like it's going to be trouble. Kraken's Pull. Yeah, Kraken's Pull did feel like an oddly good spell to get for only 15. It's kind of... Kraken's Pull was very similar to being Pit of Shades, but cheaper. Though, I'm not a Vampire Coast expert. I don't play that much Vampire Coast. They're one of my least played races, and up until Warhammer 3, I didn't play them at all. But when I actually played Luther Harkon properly, I actually found out I really enjoyed them. Noctilus is the start... See, my issue was in Warhammer 2, I played Vampire Coast as Noctilus, and that one was a little bit different. Noctilus is a neat idea, but I just didn't... He's so far away from everybody else that it's kind of an annoying early game. Luther Harkon gets to duke it out with the Lizardmen early on and build some kind of empire there. So I thought it was more fun to do that. Plague Upgrade. None of these are like spells that in particular... I don't have any particular spells memorized right now that I think are particularly troublesome. Invocation of Nehek got a slight nerf in magic cost. But yeah, these are... Yeah, okay. Little bit of a price raise for the vampire counts in general. Alright, Master of the Dead, that's the Necromancer ability that provides health regen for zombies and skeletons, I think. Maybe it's more than that. Master of the Dead is health regen for all nearby undead units, isn't it? I'm not for certain. Reworked to be an intensity-based ability. Intensity of the regeneration effect increases based on the number of entities that are killed within a 35-meter radius of a character with Master of the Dead. That's a nerf. Unless it is just a... Okay, I guess it depends on where the thresholds are and what the starting amount is. But that kind of sounds like a nerf. That sounds like the Necromancers now have to be on the front lines and very close to the front lines. And that's bad for Necromancers because they're one of the squishiest Lord types, if not the squishiest Lord type in the whole game. In order to get the buff they used to get for free. I guess I'll have to take a look at the actual stats to see what it looks like, because we're not seeing what this actually does. But I did not particularly feel the Necromancers needed a nerf, because let's be real here, the overwhelming majority of players never build Master Necromancers. They go with Vampire Lords, because Vampire Lords are way tougher. They can do a lot of the same things that Master Necromancers do. The Master of the Dead ability is the only thing they really lack, and maybe a couple campaign skills. But otherwise, they are by and large Master Necromancers, but better. And Lord recruitment has always been a problem, I feel, for Total War Warhammer, because Lords have been a way to get access to really strong units in the early game. And the Vampire Counts are the strongest example of that, because Vampire Lords are some of the strongest Lords in the whole game. Lizardmen can have a similar thing. There are a lot of times where you won't bother recruiting Red-Crested Skink Chiefs or Saurus Old Bloods. Just go for Kroxigors, because they're big monsters. You know, the ancient Kroxigors. There you go. Couple Lord abilities, none that particularly seem important to me. Unholy Lodestone. Oh, isn't... Hang on. Reliquary Binding, I don't remember what that is. Reliquary Binding. I don't remember what that is. That's attached to a unit of some kind. I don't want to say it's the Casket of Souls. I don't think it's the Casket of Souls, but it sounds like it would be on the Casket of Souls. The Unholy Lodestone, though, they have nerfed the healing by 50%, but it now provides a leadership bonus of 4. That's a little bit odd, but I guess when you throw on that the corpse card also buffs melee attack and melee defense by 5, that's not bad, but it is a pretty notable nerf. Beastmen, not too many changes, though they should benefit quite nicely from the upgrades to articulated vehicles that have been made. Oh, okay. They've changed the way that chariots work, I guess, because the Chaos Dwarfs introduced their trains mechanic. Fixed cases where Beastman unit capacity will increase twice from the same effect. I did notice, in particular, if you've ever played the campaign for Malagor. I always get Morgur and Malagor's names mixed up. They're too similar. If you've ever played Malagor's campaign, you notice very quickly that the Harpy unit cap just rapidly outpaces every other unit cap. In part because of Malagor's own Lord skill. But as they just say right there, sometimes it seems like you're getting double the amount of Harpies you really should. Not that you're complaining, but it is nonetheless very funny to see a point in, let's say, midway through the Beastman campaign, where you still only have a set of, like, I don't know, 8 or 10 Gores, dual weapons. That's your unit cap for those guys. Meanwhile, your unit cap for Harpies is 32, and Harpies aren't that useful of a unit. Though Malagor makes them a lot better. Fixed an issue where the capital border image was missing on Beastman settlements in the settlement panel. Fixed Torox and Oxyodal's quest battles not playing the intro cutscene correctly. Beastman Herdstone upgrades were not applying. Oh, really? Well, good thing I haven't played any Beastman campaigns since Immortal Empire's launch. That's a pretty big bug to have. Ruinous Seance's Herdstone building not providing additional dread from fighting battles. Fixed Malagor's Nightmarish Cabal skill, not reducing Brave, Shame, and Action hero costs. Clarified the effect given by the unique Herdstone building available at Altdorf. It now provides melee attack when fighting against all human races rather than just Empire and Bretonnia. Yeah, the bonuses against men thing have been a big pain. Because historically, the bonuses against men buff in Total War Warhammer have actually not been a bonus against all human races. They have been a bonus against just Empire, the crappy little Southern Realms, not Kataf's excellent mod, but Crave Assembly's crappy default Southern Realms, and in Warhammer 2, the crappy discount Kislev as well. And the buffs did not apply to fighting Bretonnia or Norska. And now in Warhammer 3, I believe it was the same case, the buffs did not apply to fighting Kislev or Cathay. Now it should be properly set up based off what they say here. Now a buff against men, a buff to damage against men should apply to Empire, Bretonnia, Norska, Kislev, Cathay, and presumably whatever mods you have packed in as well, so Southern Realms, what have you. Fixed the Brave Shaman unit card on the campaign map. Didn't notice it had an issue. The Bestigor Herd, okay, yeah, a leadership buff to 70 and a melee defense buff to 30. Wow. Yeah, that's pretty good. 30 is a very high melee defense buff for a great weapon unit that isn't a dwarf or a chaos warrior. That's nice. The Cygor has gone from 17 melee defense to 25. That's nice. So he's going to be a bit tankier in melee. Razor Gore Chariots got their Entity Mass buffed, and apparently also got buffed by whatever changes they made to interlocked vehicles. What did they call? Articulated vehicles. So, buffs to chariots. I'm a big fan of chariots, so I'm not going to complain. And Minotaur's great weapons have lost a little bit of their bonus versus large. That does remind me, I hope that they've toned down the Bull Centaur stats. Because looking at the early previews a lot of YouTubers got for the Chaos Dwarfs, there was one unifying opinion of the Chaos Dwarfs don't have any really particularly overpowered units except the Bull Centaurs. The Bull Centaurs are crazy. They are, for all intents and purposes, Dragon Ogres at nearly half the cost. And as a matter of fact, I want to say they beat Dragon Ogres, even though they're half the cost, and both them and Dragon Ogres are anti-large. So hopefully there's been some changes there. Fixed Morgur's Herald of Corruption skill, not applying corruption to adjacent provinces. Fixed an issue where Malagor's Crowfather skill would apply twice. That Malagor seems like he's got a lot of weird bugs that make him way stronger than he should be. And even without the bugs, Malagor is super strong. Malagor is one of the most insane legendary lords I've ever got to play with in Total War Warhammer. Once you get his skill tree going, Malagor is just broken. Fixed Malagor's Something Wicked This Way Comes skill, reducing enemy leadership as the skill level increases. I don't know what that means, but that sounds nasty. Updated Beastman skills and challenges to include buffs for Feral Manticores. Right, because Feral Manticores weren't a unit until they added them for free with the Beastman overhaul. The same way they added the Wood Elf Glade Riders with spears in the Wood Elf overhaul. Fixed the number of Beastman technologies not applying the stated effects to the stated units. Fixed the Beastman challenge / technology World Bane not giving weapon strength when fighting against all human races. Sounds like they fixed the all men problem. Bretonia's had a rough time lately, so to help a little, their late game cavalry has been given a few sturdy buffs. I'm a Bretonia man, so I ain't gonna complain. In the future, we hope to bring Bretonia's battle capabilities up a notch to meet some of the newer factions, but in their interest of not over-egging that particular pudding, we'll be keeping a close eye on how they progress in the present after this update. Okay, so they're keeping it calm, okay. That's good. Crib Assembly could stand to do that a little bit more often. I think Warhammer 2. Warhammer 3, we'll see. The Chaos Dwarfs sound like they have as many malices to bring down the big buffs they get. So that's good. Crib Assembly needs to kind of look backwards a little bit, I think, at nerfing some of the insane stuff they added in Warhammer 2 as part of the DLC cycle. The Greenskins are a pain to fight against. You will be in the mid-game, and you will have 2 armies, and you will have to fight 8 armies of Greenskins from one faction. It's absurd. And don't get me wrong, I need to say this every time. I'm fully aware that there are plenty of people out there, several of whom have YouTube channels, that can pull that off with ease. They just dance their lord around, and they make the entire Greenskin army act like a bunch of dolts while they get shredded by missile fire. I'm aware, but not everyone plays that way. And for the people who don't play that way, for the people who do play that way, legendary difficulty is always there. For the people who don't play that way, it's ridiculous to have to face so many strong units at such an absurd quantity, at such an absurd quality, so early in the game. And it's a big reason why both Greasus and Scrag have horrible campaigns right now. Scrag is in the old world, surrounded by enemies. Greasus is in the Mountains of Morn, and he has a good couple allies next to him. But he starts right next to Grimgor. And hopefully the Chaos Dwarfs can keep Grimgor a little more toned down, so the Greasus campaign is a lot more tolerable. But there's a clear point in the Greasus campaign where a lot of your fight is just against Grimgor for survival. And a lot of push and pull, just entirely depending on whether Grimgor has a wall active or not, which 90% of the time it seems like he does have a wall. And for the Zhao Ming campaign, there is a clear point where you go from having a very nice, calm campaign of setting up a trade empire and getting your harmony set up, to pushing everything you can to try and keep Greasus alive, because Grimgor is going to wreck the entirety of your trade routes, and make it impossible for you to use the trade caravan mechanic anymore, because he will just send a wall army after every single trade caravan you put out. So, hopefully we see some changes there. Battle Pilgrims have had a reduction in cost. Interesting. A 50 gold reduction. That's nice. Battle Pilgrims are one of the units that really set Bretonia's infantry game apart, so that's nice to see. Grail Knights have received a melee defense buff of 2, but more significantly, a bonus versus large buff of 6. Which means if they're fighting other cavalry, that is both a melee attack and weapon strength bonus of 6. And when you add on to that the charge bonus, which also gets applied to melee attack, that's pretty nice. The Grail Guardians got a much bigger wow, that is a way bigger buff. Better armor-piercing damage in general, that's nice, because Grail Guardians were a little bit odd for their lack of armor-piercing, for them to be such a late-game unit. But a melee attack buff from 36 to 42. Grail Guardians have a melee defense that's in the 50s. Grail Guardians are an underrated unit. Or, well, no, they're not underrated because they're very expensive and very late game for what they can do. But, as very tanky, beefy units go, the classic talks are, Iron Breakers are tanky and beefy. Longbeards, the dwarf, near everything the dwarfs get is tanky and beefy. Chosen are tanky. Celestial Dragon Guard are tanky. A lot of people forget just how tough the Grail Guardians are. The Grail Guardians will just, even though they're a cavalry unit, they will just tar pit a unit for a good, 7 or 8 minutes. Along the same kind of time frames you'd expect out of the Iron Breakers. It's a long time. And a buff of melee attack from 36 to 42, charge bonus from 38 to 50, means Grail Guardians now hit like trains as well. A 42 melee attack means they are going to wreck a lot of infantry in sustained combat. So Grail Guardians just suddenly became a much, much better unit. Hippogriffs now have 2200 mass instead of 1650. That's nice, so now they're just going to bowl over most things, apparently including... Hang on, that's a higher mass than the, That's a higher mass than Razorgore chariots, so now Hippogriffs just get to bully chariots. That's funny. Pegasus Knights looks like just across-the-board buffs. Hoo boy, 32 melee defense on Pegasus Knights. They are much less squishy. 75 charge bonus! Hoo boy! 75 charge bonus and just general speed increases across the board. Though those look like they're probably speed increases on the ground. If you've got your Pegasus Knights on the ground, you're not using them properly, usually. I shouldn't make a broad statement like that, but still, 75 charge bonus. Because air-based charges... Okay, so Total War has a mechanic where a unit that is higher in elevation than another unit making a melee attack against a unit that is lower in elevation does much more damage. That's why a unit that is fighting downhill will usually do way better than it should. And you'll sometimes see a low-tier unit beat an elite unit that they were fighting downhill. Or an elite unit that was fighting downhill wipe out a low-tier unit in seconds. Pegasus Knights and all other flying units, when they make a downward charge into the opponent's flank, it's not only taking the charge bonus, it's also taking the elevation bonus. So Pegasus Knights, even with a seemingly good, but not astounding charge bonus of 55, Pegasus Knights had a really strong charge. Because they got that elevation bonus. And now with a charge bonus buff of 20 charge bonus, it's going to be disgusting. I am very interested in playing around with that. Bretonia sounds like they're going to be in a very happy place. Royal Pegasus Knights got another nice, hefty health bonus, much bigger than the one regular Pegasus Knights got. A melee defense buff from 32 to 36. The same charge bonus buff, which is going to be beefy. And a entity mass buff. Really? So Royal Pegasuses are going to be more able to push people around and bully people than regular Pegasuses. Let's see. The Regiment of Renown Battle Pilgrims also got a cost reduction. And unicorn mounts have also received some mild changes. Yeah, nothing special. Chivalry bonus for fighting Warriors of Chaos with Renewous Powers Decree now applies correctly. Originally, the bonus for fighting Warriors of Chaos was mistakenly coming in from the Green Tide Decree. That's funny. Supporting religious infantry no longer gives Rapunce de Lyonesse a diplomacy bonus with herself. Increased turn duration required for Bordello Confederation technology. Okay. Alright. And now for the Demon Prince. They do benefit from the changes to the Monogod rosters. Okay, so we're going to see a lot of that. Okay. And the changes have mostly centered around Be'lakor, who's received a few nerfs after data showed him to be overperforming in most cases. Be'lakor's really strong. I've never played his campaign, but I've played him in battle, and he's beefy. Okay. Yada, yada, yada. Nothing really particularly interesting. Oh, added filters right to the Demon Prince customization menu. That's very nice. And the Demon Prince's Reverence building change, not offering the extra income reward when growth per turn was higher than 200 and while dedicated to Nurgle, as described by the text on the building, has been fixed. Very good. And then some changes to the unique lords they get in custom battles. Dark Elves. Dark Elves are in a pretty good place right now, battle-wise. They look like they're in one of the healthiest ones, from the stats I was seeing. But have been indirectly hit thanks to a bug fix where riders on their war machines were firing more projectiles than intended. This issue is skewing the performance of Scourge Runner chariots and Blood-Rack cauldrons quite significantly. We've also made a notable buffs to Shades, which help to diversify the weapon variants a little bit more and reduce their recruitment time in campaign. I did always think it was weird that it took 2 turns to recruit Shades, because they're not that super strong of a unit. Okay, let me change that. In battles, Shades are a pretty good unit, but on campaign, they're not a very good unit. There's a difference there, right? Because in campaign, you have to consider auto-resolve. And a lot of the times in campaign, you have to consider how much a unit can just do killing power on its own for the sheer masses of infantry the AI is going to throw at you. Units that are more utility, units that are more built on surprise tactics, are just not as useful against the AI. In large part because the AI usually relies on mob tactics, and also in part because ambushing and sneaking and so on and so forth aren't quite as valuable against the AI as it is against players. Nonetheless, fixed an issue with FLC banners not displaying correctly in some situations in Skirmish vs. AI. The minor faction of Clark-Arond will now start with their faction leader on the map as intended. Fixed issues with defensive towers on the Har-Caldra battle map. Why is that counted as a Dark Elf change and not a change for... Because Har-Caldra can be held by races other than Dark Elves. Anyways, Haggrafe skin assets have been updated on the top bar. Fixed an issue where the Black Ark was only displaying water on one side. Fixed when disbanded, Dark Elf Lords will no longer gain another name of power. I didn't know about that bug, but that's funny. Can you just keep farming them? And have a guy with 8 names? Black Arks can now recruit via allied recruitment. Okay, that's actually... I didn't know that would be an issue. That is fun to think about, though. Someone who is not a Dark Elf getting conscripted onto these horrible Dark Elf slave ships. Guess it makes sense, though. It wouldn't be too weird to see, like, a unit of Chaos Warriors hanging out on a Black Ark. The Dark Elves are iffy with the Warriors of Chaos, but they can at least work together. Reworked Crust Battle intro scenes. Okay, and it looks like... Yeah, we've got a little bit of just some mild changes. A reduction in missile damage for Black Ark Corsairs. Increase in armor for it looks like... Wait, just the Bleak Swords? Oh, just for the Bleak Swords. The Bleak Swords now have an armor bonus. Which the Dark Shards and Dread Spears don't get. That's kind of weird. Hellebrin has more armor on a Manticore. Cold Ones and... Yeah, Cold One chariots now move at different speeds and are meteor, less likely to get pushed around. The Dark Pegasus has some changes. Yeah, a lot of changes to entity mass and run speed, which are not the kind of stats that I'm very well aware of. So I couldn't tell you what they're really doing. Though it looks like across the board there are entity mass upgrades for chariots, which... will be a big change for Slaanesh, if memory serves, because Slaanesh... No, I think they fixed that in Immortal Empires. At launch, Slaanesh had a weird thing where even though the chariots had great stats, they had very low entity mass, so they couldn't do a whole lot of the actual chariot pushing people around, which chariots you kind of expect to be able to do that. Let's see. Yeah, just a lot of changes to mounts and move speeds and so on. And here we go, the changes to Shades. It doesn't look like they've changed regular Shades at all, they just changed the 2 upgraded variants. They have had reduced cost in multiplayer, but evidently not in campaign, that's weird. Reduced recruitment time, that's very nice. Increased melee attack and melee defense. Oh, increased melee attack for dual weapons, but not for greatswords. Interesting. Increased melee defense for both. Well, actually, no. Reduced melee defense for Shades with dual weapons. Increased melee defense for ones with great swords. So the great swords are supposed to have a little bit more holding power, and they have the bonus versus infantry and presumably armor piercing. That's curious, though, because great swords have a bonus versus infantry, and I have to assume Shade's dual weapons have a bonus versus infantry, because pretty well all dual weapon units do. But if they both have bonus versus infantry, and Shades with dual weapons have higher melee attack, then are Shades with dual weapons better for fighting large units? I don't know. And updated the source input for Murderous Prowess to match the initial implementation. It now takes deaths from both alliances as currency. Oh, was Murderous Prowess not taking deaths from both sides? Because that's a big change if it was only taking deaths from one side, not the other. Dwarfs. Now that the Great Shame has finally reared its fiery bovine head, the dwarfs have upgraded the shields for their melee lords, heroes, and infantry, along with having their recruitment costs tweaked. Yeah, that was an issue that a lot of people were complaining about for a long time, the fact that dwarfs had bronze shields instead of silver. Fixed an issue in the model variation used by the Dwarf Lord characters, fixed pathfinding issues in dwarven minor settlements, fixed a gap in the terrain along the wall line of Karakazkaraz. Fixed Thorgrim Grudgebearer being a wide elector count. Okay, yeah, that was a bit of a meme for a minute. Thoric Ironbrow has a mission change for confederating Karakazul again. He is currently able to confederate the normal way as he does in Warhammer 2. Removing an agent from military forces now removes the correct active agent actions. Were you able to just stack active agent actions on armies? I've not heard about that exploit, but that would have been a weird one. Fixed intro cutscenes for quest battles. Flame cannons have been reduced in cost. That makes sense. With the Chaos Dwarfs here, regular dwarf artillery just ain't as impressive. Reduced cost for the Anvil of Doom mount. Nerf to blasting charges. I think that is rather weird to see, considering right now, from the footage we've seen, Infernal Ironsworn get such absurd damage out of their naphtha bombs. I wonder if it was intentional on Crave Assembly's part that they want the blasting charges to be kind of underwhelming in comparison to the naphtha bombs. I don't know. Reduced cost for runesmiths in multiplayer, but not for campaign. That's odd. And all the units that have shields have been buffed from having bronze shields to silver shields. Cathay. Doing pretty good at the moment, but there are some cost corrections needed for their lords in multiplayer. Jade Warriors have also received some tweaks to bring them in line with comparable units on other factions. Yes, Jade Warriors needed a buff. Cathay, it was very obvious that you needed to... Okay. The Rice Terraces of the Turtle Field will now deal less damage to chariots. Oh, yeah, that's one of my favorite things from Warhammer 3's launch. One of my favorite bugs I've seen in Total War... Well, not bugs, but just goofy things I've seen in Total War Warhammer. Because I can speak from experience. When I started up Warhammer 3 for the first time, I went to play Miao Ying first. She was the one I was excited to play. And one of the first maps I got was set on a set of rice terraces. And Miao Ying, of course, starts with a set of grand cannons. So I naturally march the grand cannons forwards, telling them to get more in range to shoot the enemy. And I did not think that telling them to march downhill on those rice terraces would be a problem. They fell off the rice terrace, the one rice terrace to the next, and while it was a very small fall, it was still enough fall damage to break every single cannon. And it was stupid. It should have been annoying, but it was so funny to see that I couldn't be mad. Because it was honestly just watching the Chaos Dwarf artillerymen push the cannons off, and the cannons just kind of fell over. And just fell apart. And it just looked so dumb. Added Gotrek and Felix to Cathayan skirmish battles. I did think it's weird that Gotrek and Felix are... You can take Gotrek and Felix in the Cathay campaign, but you can't in custom battles. So I guess they fixed that. But yeah, Cathay... Yeah, Jade Warriors needed a buff because Peasant Spearmen have for a long time been more or less just explicitly better, especially with the sheer amount of buffs you can stack on them in campaign. Because it's not just Lord buffs, which are good enough already, but Cathay has a lot of very good followers that buff Peasant Spearmen. Increased unit mass for chariots. Wait, okay. Miao Yin can now attack the nearest settlement after completing the first battle on turn 1 in Realms of Chaos. Fixed a bug which would cause Wei Jin to lack 10 settlement slots if you recaptured it. Okay. Dragon-blooded Shugangan Lords have had a cost increase. If they increase the cost for Shugangan and not Lord Magistrates, that would make sense. Lord Magistrates are a little. The cost difference is not enough to really justify taking Lord Magistrates, even though Lord Magistrates have the Master Necromancer problem. They're better at buffing friendly units, but in campaign, you generally want a unit that can do a lot of killing on its own, unless it has really absurd skill tree buffs. And in custom battles, multiplayer battles, you want a Lord that can stand up and fight for itself, because Lord sniping is such a strong meta in multiplayer and has been since launch. Anyways, yeah, the Shugangan Lord has a cost increased. Hopefully that will increase usage of the Lord Magistrate. And we've got some more walk speed changes, which again, I still don't know what those entirely do. Or I don't know how to properly compare those to anything I'm aware of. The rocket battery had a hit point increase. Okay, artillery in general had a hit point increase. Hopefully they won't die to rice terraces so much then. Jade Warrior crossbowmen have had a reduced cost in multiplayer. Jade Warriors have had nerfed melee defense. Huh. It's kind of the opposite of what I was saying, actually. Okay, well, I guess the Peasant Longspearman meta is still a thing. And the Legendary Lords have had reduced cost. Okay. And the blue line skill on Convoy Masters that increased sell value of cargo will now function as intended. You know, I did my Xiaoming campaign wonder why that one wasn't getting me as much money as I figured it should. Oh, greenskins have benefited greatly in this patch. Okay, if you buffed everything but the wall mechanic and nerfed the wall mechanic, I would love to hear that. Savage Orc Boar Boys, and all the associated big ones have received some melee defense buffs, which should increase their staying power in combat. Pump Wagons were severely underperforming, you're telling me, so they've received a bit of a redesign to help them stand out a bit from other war machines on the roster. Now sporting 12 entities per unit on Ultra Size instead of 4, they should be even more chaotic than before. That will be funny to see, a massed horde of pump wagons just going in the enemy's direction. And given Arachnorex Spiders a bit more leadership and buff their damage. Grimgore Ironhide is once again at last not a big green boy. I've heard some people are still mad about the new Grimgore skin, but it seems like Creative Assembly just kinda can't get Grimgore right for a lot of people. I thought he looked silly as, you know, Mr. Green Martian Man. Jolly Green Giant. But it was tolerable. But I definitely would prefer for him to not be that bright green, so that'd be nice. No Rest for the Wicked. Grimgore Ironhide's short victory conditions now include the Chaos Dwarfs. Which is what it should be, because Grimgore hates the Chaos Dwarfs. If you go with the end times being canon, which on some level, I'm cool with some end time stuff being canon, but I hate a lot of it. And one of the things I did like about the end times was giving Grimgore the backstory of being an escaped Chaos Dwarf slave. I think that's a lot more distinctive than him just being a big orc who showed up one day and beats people up, and he's big by his miniature. Fixed Goblin Rock Globbers not having a projectile trail. Re-added unique garrisons for Skarsnik and Wurzag's main settlement and garrison chains. Updated and corrected the deployable tower connections to capture points in the Greenskin Minor Settlement battle maps. Okay, Arachnorod's got a leadership buff, some melee damage buffs, and a considerably larger bonus versus large. That is nice to see. The Arachnarok seems like it should be one of the best anti-monster monsters, but it actually really wasn't. Hopefully now it can do a little bit better at what seemed to be its job of being the anti-monster monster. A 20 buff to melee attack versus large is pretty good. Azag now has his items back when mounted, and he has more health on the dragon. The wyvern, whatever. Feral wyverns get a little bit of buffs across the board. And hang on. Whew. Having a little bit of trouble catching my breath here. And yeah, just buffs to wyverns and arachnoroks across the board. Wolf Rider archers. Whoa! Goblin Wolf Rider archers and Spider Rider archers now have a 360-degree firing arc. Haven't they always? Was that... I didn't notice. Did they have that as an issue in Warhammer 3? Because I thought in Warhammer 2 they always had that. That must have been an issue moving from Warhammer 2 to Warhammer 3. They must have lost the 360-degree firing arc. Because that is a big one. Which, there are only 2 or 3 skirmish cav units in the whole game that don't have a 360-degree firing arc intentionally. And one of them is Outriders with grenade launchers. The other is Dark Riders for the Dark Elves. Which I always thought that was an odd one. I mean, don't get me wrong. The Dark Riders are packing those big, clunky crossbows. Maybe the regular Outriders also have a 60-degree firing arc instead of 360. I'll have to check that later. But I always thought it was funny, the Dark Riders having those big, clunky crossbows that they have trouble aiming in a 360-degree arc. And I want to say Dark Riders are also one of the only 2 cavalry units, skirmish cavalry units in the game that do not have fire while moving. The other one, again, being Outriders with grenade launchers. Which I just find so strange, because balance-wise, Dark Riders aren't really that super strong. So it's kind of odd for them to have that. Anyways, more changes and buffs to chariots. Wolf Rider chariots now have firewall moving. What a weird thing to miss. And a 360-degree firing arc. Wow, Goblin Wolf chariots must have been terrible in Warhammer 3 then, at launch then. Immortal Empire's launch. More buffs for Ragnarok Riders. Boar Boys have had mildly increased entity mass. That's nice, because they need a little bit of help. Boar Chariots. Yeah, just more chariot buffs across the board. Boar Chariots in particular getting higher melee attack and weapon strength. Savage Orcs getting mild increased melee attack and a more... They are now just kind of bad in the melee defense category. They're not terrible anymore, but they're just kind of bad. Which I'm not complaining. Savage Orcs should be an aggressive offensive unit. And yeah, just similar buffs across the board for the Savage Orcs. Snotling Pump Wagons now have 12 men to a unit on Ultra, and presumably 9 on Large. I play on Large. I should consider switching to Ultra at some point, though, because my new computer probably can run Ultra fine. And they now have 400 hit points to a Pump Wagon rather than 1,150, since there's now 4 times as many as there were. Reduced charge bonus, increased rank depth, reduced weapon damage, yeah, because they're now having that many more units. And similar changes, presumably, for all of the Pump Wagons. That's not a huge... That's still a pretty good charge bonus. Yeah, similar across the board. And very mild changes for Stone Trolls. Wurzag Colossal White Warpaint skill applying physical damage, physical resistance to rogue idol units twice. That's a good bug to fix. Okay, High Elves. A few corrections and changes for High Elves this time around, but overall they are performing quite well. Lothran Sea Guard and Chariot Mounts have received a cost correction, with Chariots also benefiting from a mass increase. War Lines have received a chunky buff, they kind of needed it. And the fire resistance of units of Caledonian nobility has been reduced slightly. With the coming of the Chaos Dwarfs, we've also removed flaming attacks from dragon melee weapons, so that they remain competitive against this new race of fire-resistant units. The breath attack, however, is still considered to be a flaming attack as it was on tabletop. Right, all Chaos Dwarfs have very high fire resist. So that means there are a lot of units that do fire damage that are going to be way worse against the Chaos Dwarfs than against other races. That's interesting. Okay, Malandir's left leg is now skinned correctly. Huh? And Lethanar's faction now has access to Lilith's Blessing rather than the raiding stance. I don't know, I kind of liked that Lethanar was the only High Elf who got access to the raiding stance. Like, I kind of thought that was neat how it contrasted with the other High Elves still trying to be, you know, hoity-toity and high and mighty from a moral perspective, but Lethanar is just about anger and vengeance. Fixed issues where Imix Dragons encounters not triggering after completing the 5 named dragon encounters. I didn't even know there were unnamed dragon encounters. I've never played Imix campaign. Fixed an exploit where Eltharion can capture prisoners from reinforcing armies when in a lightning strike battle. Okay. Fixed Lethanar's marked for death missions markers revealing enemies in the ambush stance. That's funny. Not that the AI makes good use of ambush stance anyways. Updated and corrected the connections of the gatehouses to the capture points in the Ulthwyn Gate settlement battle maps. Reworked the quest battle. Okay. And across the board, yeah, looks like just mild change. Looks like mostly buffs to chariots. As expected. Reductions in fire resistance. Yeah, fire resistance, having a high fire resist on a unit now that the Chaos Dwarfs are out. Yeah, I can see where, like, for instance, Dragon Princes would have been considered a hard counter to Chaos Dwarfs because of the absurd damage fire resist, meaning they would ignore 40% of all incoming damage from Chaos Dwarfs. Now that the Chaos Dwarfs are here, fire resistance and fire damage have both become much more important stats to consider. Kinda similar to how demons significantly increased the importance of magic, which was already pretty important, but magic attacks? Do magic attacks? Magic attacks do. Okay, I was a little mixed up in my brain. Yeah, the arrival of demons significantly increased the importance of magic attacks. There we go. I was a bit confused. I couldn't remember what the significance of magic attacks was, because I remembered they made a big change to the way resistances worked with magic attacks. And I was getting it mixed up with the way they changed it for magic resistance. Because they made it where dwarfs, units that have magic resistance, no longer take reduced damage from magic attacks, because that would mean that the dwarfs, for instance, would not care about a lot of magic attacks. And I want to say it would make it so the dwarfs more or less just didn't care about demons' magic attacks at all. Nonetheless, how many times can I say magic attacks? Yeah, it's exactly as they said. Buffs to chariots, mostly. And let's see. War Lions got a slight increase to melee attack, a considerable increase to missile damage resistance, and a considerable increase to entity mass. So, with that high of entity mass now, which is very high for a unit of pretty well war dogs, or in this case, war cats, they will have an increased ability to pull out of bad fights, which is very nice for a war dog type unit. Because you throw them around a bit casually, sometimes they get mixed up into the wrong fights. Khorne has received only minor changes this time around, though we'll be watching these closely since they target some of Khorne's key units. Fleshhounds and Minotaurs have been overperforming, so they have been rebalanced. Bloodletters and Forsaken of Khorne have received a small buff, while Chosen of Khorne have been made slightly cheaper to make them more accessible options. Oh no, I don't want to see cheap Chosen of Khorne. Please no. Fixed the visual issue with Exalted Bloodthirster accessories. Scarbrand will now make his mind up much faster moving to engage an enemy unit in melee. Yeah, a little bit mild buffs to Blood Crushers, Bloodletters get... Not Bloodletters, Bloodthirsters? I don't know. Yeah, Bloodletters, mild buffs, nothing too big. The Exalted Bloodthirster is a little bit cheaper. And mild nerfs to Fleshhounds. There we go. A little bit cheaper Scarbrand as well. Oh, they divided it up into Demon and Mortal groups. That's fun. Yeah, Chosen have received... that's... 50 gold decrease. At that high of a cost, a 50 gold decrease is pretty nice to see. That is going to be... Oh, wow. That is a considerable reduction in cost for the dual weapon variant. Wow. That is a 150 gold reduction in cost. That adds up quickly. That kind of reduction, that kind of discount adds up quickly. Hoo boy. Mild buffs to the Knights of Khorne. Mild buffs to, yeah, just more Knights of Khorne. And some changes to the cost of hero mounts, but nobody pays attention to hero mounts, and then they wonder where all their money is going. Forsaken of Khorne have increased armor. Okay, Forsaken buffs make sense. You don't see Forsaken all that often. Minotaurs get, yeah, nerfs across the board. Minotaurs specifically of Khorne. So, yeah, 36 to 34. Melee defense 30 to 27. Charge bonus 44 to 34. Ooh, that's a big change. That's a big reduction in charge bonus. A reduction of 10. Ooh, boy. Those look like some big nerfs all around. Ooh. Could stand, there's some stuff in the game that could stand to see nerfs like that. Kislev hasn't been doing great in battle recently, so these changes act as a first step towards improving things. Armored Kossars and Sargard have received some melee buffs to boost their frontline staying power, while all Kislev cavalry units get a mass boost to match some of their contemporaries from other races. Ice Guard have also gained some additional missile penetration. Reduce the number of factions at war with and holding diplomatic negatives towards Castalton. Katarine now maintains both the magical attacks and frostbite contact effects when on her Warbear mount. Boris' start position has been moved when in a multiplayer campaign in Immortal Empires, with Astrogoth and Boris both being played, so they don't just start out pretty well up each other's... well, you get it. Yeah, Kislev. Kislev's in an odd position, where in Realm of Chaos, they're still very much the one that Crave Assembly wants you to play, it feels. But Kislev is innately, by nature, as part of their culture, as part of their whole lore thing, always going to have a really difficult campaign. Because that's Kislev. And Crave Assembly is going to have a difficult time trying to put together a Kislev campaign that is a little bit more accessible. Because right now, Katarine, Castalton, and Boris all have very, very difficult campaigns. Let's see. Oath Brothers of Tor now correctly have the Buy Our Blood passive. Fixed an issue where AI-controlled Little Grom units did not behave as intended, leading to them attacking the wrong target or not attacking at all. Winds of Magic will no longer be capped at 20 for the Ice Court's final battle. Armored Kossars got buffs to both melee attack and melee defense. They are now entering the hallowed halls of... the hallowed halls of units with 40 melee defense. Similar buffs for Armored Kossars with great weapons. No melee attack buffs, just weapon strength and melee defense. Interesting. Entity mass upgrades for their cavalry and chariots. Okay, that's always good to see. A reduction in cost for horse archers. That's good to see. Horse archers are supposed to be a core unit for Kislev, but they don't really feel like it right now. Ice Guard, both variants. Despite having a magical missile weapon, the penetration of the Ice Guard's projectile is relatively low. Therefore, we've raised this value so that the projectile will penetrate and deal damage to more targets per volley. Wait, so their arrows will now go through one target and into the guy behind him? That seems like a huge buff. Sheesh. Okay. That one requires some testing, though. Oh, boy. Kossovite Dervishes now have mildly more armor, so they aren't just so squishy, but I'd still just take Horse Archers over them. They're pretty well the same, but better. Streltsy. Enemy size for allowing splash attacks has been changed from medium to small. Streltsy had splash attacks? That must have been a mess up. What a weird unit to give splash attacks to. That would be so bizarre. Zargard have a melee attack buff from 34 to 36. No buffs to their melee defense, which makes sense, because Zargard already has extremely high melee defense. And 40 melee attack on Zargard with great weapons. Ottomans will no longer siphon experience from other characters when leading a garrisoned army with the maxed out Mentor skill. That's weird that they siphoned that. That's a weird bug. Lots of cost changes for Lizardmen, with most of their big dinos getting a slight discount. Croc scores have been buffed up a bit to be sturdier in combat. The Ancient Salamander has received a recruitment time reduction among other buffs, which should help it thrive in campaign. I've never seen such a unit that you would expect to not really be that significant, but is nonetheless such a talking point as the Ancient Salamander. That unit is just such a thing for so many people. Spirit of Teapot Coatl also had its bound spell switched out to make it a more viable pick. Fix the Skink Chief's mask colors. This has been going on for too long. This has gone on for already an hour and 20 minutes, and I've probably got more to look at, more to read. Oh, good God, the scroll bar. Oh, no. Oh, I need to speed it up. Oh, no. Oh, no, this is going to be such a big video. YouTube is not going to like this. Oh, this is going to be a big, big video. I'm going to have to speed it up way faster. Oh, boy. I'm just sitting here and dissecting every little thing. I'm a fool. Okay, Norska. Yeah, Lizardman. Okay. Yeah, looks like across the board. All right. Hey, some new unit attributes for blessed units. Yeah, Woodsman. Nice. Blessed units. It always bugs me to see the blessed units in the the patch notes when I know that like there's so little time you get to actually use them in the campaign. Yeah, it looks like cost buffs across the board. These look like they're just multiplayer, though. Won't really matter that much for campaign. Where's the Ancient Salamanders buffs? Because that's the one that everybody is going to be interested in. Nice buffs to Croxagores. Yeah, it makes Croxagores look like they're going to be quite a bit beefier of a monstrous infantry unit. The Ancient Salamander has a faster projectile velocity, apparently. More health points. So 1,000 health point increase is pretty nice. Okay, so that's... The Ancient Salamanders are going to be not quite so weak in melee. 1 turn to recruit, so they're not just, a unit that you ignore. Salamander hunting packs have also seen an increase to their range, or to their effective range. Okay, that's the range at which they're accurate, which is different from their maximum range. Because effective range is where, once you get past the effective range, that's when the shots get steadily much more inaccurate. And they also have increased to projectile velocity. The Spirit of Teapot has lost Shield of Thorns and Lesser Banishment in exchange for Earthblood and Barona's Time Warp. Okay, so it has a bound cast of heal spells. That's nice. Dread Saurian has a splash attack knockback force multiplier of 1 to 1.7. That sounds like a big change, but I couldn't tell you. Norsca has received a few targeted buffs to some of their underperforming units. Mammoths are cheaper. Fimir now got their Scaly Skin bonus from Tabletop. And Marauder champions with great weapons have been ironed out a bit. Ice Wolf chariots have also received a considerable buff to their missile weapon. I feel like Norsca and Bretonia are both in store for some new units, I feel like that's both of them need that balance-wise. Nonetheless. Okay, yeah, we've got upkeep cost to Mammoths. That is a reduction of 100 gold. In multiplayer, that's quite big. And in campaign, a reduction of 25 gold per turn is also pretty nice. Yeah, it looks like it's just across the board. Upkeep changes. Considerable increases in missile resistance for the Fimir. That's going to be interesting for OVN Lost Factions Fimir as well, because they will probably try and remain consistent with this change. And the Fimir that OVN Lost Factions, that Fimir army in OVN Lost Factions already has pretty good missile resist across the board. Now they will have absolutely absurd missile resist across the board. Mild nerfs to Marauder champions. Mild buffs to Marauder Ice Wolf chariots. Oh, from 6 missile damage to 12. Oh, from 21 to 40. Oh, that's a considerably beefier missile. Nice, nice. I always thought the Ice Wolf chariot... The Ice Wolf chariot is one that when you're a new player will frustrate you. Because the game, it automatically defaults to ranged mode instead of melee mode. It's one of the first things you have to figure out using missile chariots when you're a new player to Total War, is figuring out that missile chariots, you should turn it to melee mode instead of ranged mode. Because if it's just set to ranged mode, it's going to do nothing. And I remember as a new player starting up Wulfric's campaign and being utterly confused by the Ice Wolf chariot and thinking it was just garbage because they were just sitting in the backlines throwing every now and then an axe that did no damage. Let's see. Mild changes to Fimir stats beyond that. A reduction in melee attack and an increase in weapon damage. Or well, it looks like a shifting from armor piercing towards non-armor piercing damage. And a considerable nerf in melee defense to Fimir warriors with great weapons, though it seems they're doing that to try and make these dual weapon Fimir warriors perhaps be the more defensively viable one. And a mild increase in melee attack and charge bonus. What? Fimir warriors with great weapons didn't have... Really? Fimir warriors and Fimir warriors with great weapons didn't have an innate missile resist. Okay, because I know they had the From the Fog ability, or whatever it was called, that increased their missile resist as long as their leadership was high. And that was like 20% missile resist on its own. Throw on an innate 25% missile resist, that adds up to 45 missile resist altogether. Which makes Fimir very resistant to missiles. Hoo boy. And a buff to the Ice Dragon. Very nice. Nurgle hasn't been feeling great for a while. Hoo boy. So we've targeted some changes at some problem units. Rotflies, Plague Drones, Plague Toads, and Pox Riders have all received some pretty considerable buffs. Also, the -5 speed reduction from the Mark of Nurgle has been removed, making the Mark Nurgle units more effective at reaching their destinations on time. So Nurgle's mortal units are going to be a good bit better at being the faster side of his roster. That's fun. more significantly, I want to say that Khorne and Nurgle's marks had nerfs as well as buffs, while Tzeentch and Slaaneish's marks were just buffs. So for the mainline Undivided Warriors of Chaos, that's also a change there. You don't need to worry about that downside. Nonetheless, that's a pretty nice change. Nurgle's Unholy Manifestation Pestilent Growth now gives further replenishment when Nurgle is Ascendant in the Great Game. Kugath's Provincial Enemy Lord, Teapot Spawn, will no longer start mounted atop a Carnosaur, because that's just cheating. I don't remember him starting on a Carnosaur. I don't remember seeing that. Maybe I had a mod that fixed that, but I don't recall the first Lord you have to fight as Kugath. I've started a Kugath campaign like 3 or 4 times now and just never stuck with it. I'm just not a fan of his star position. I guess I'm just waiting for another Nurgle Lord to come out. I cannot recall at all the first Lord you fight as Kugath starting on a Carnosaur. That sounds nuts. Alright, Nurglings. Reduced splash attacks. Okay, so Nurglings won't be so absurd at crowd killing. Increased entity masses across the board for monsters and chariots. I am not shocked. Increased entity count and hit points, both at the same time, really. And melee attack and weapon damage for plague drones, so plague drones are going to be doing a lot better. And do we have any changes to their missile attack? Does not look like it. I'm not complaining, though. Their missile attack is weird, but I'm fine with it. Similar buffs to rotflies in general. The plague toads have had an increase in cost to make up for an increase in leadership. They now have armor-piercing attacks instead of non-armor-piercing attacks. They have changes to their speed and increased mass. And similar buffs, it looks like, to the Pox Riders, yes, with much higher weapon strength in general, it seems. Plague Bearers now have increased leadership and armor. Plague Bearers still need a few more buffs before they'll be considered worth taking over Nurglings. And at the end of the day, a big part of the issue Nurgle has is that his only legendary lord is Kugath. And Kugath has a lot of buffs to Nurglings. So when you're playing Kugath, there's very little situations you ever want to recruit Plague Bearers, because Nurglings for Kugath are just that much better. Alright, mortal units of Nurgle have all got +5 speed in effect, and also some changes to their speed stats. Very nice. Okay, wait. What's with everybody getting these listings of run speed 2.3 to +2.8? Are these just across the board speed changes for a lot of units that I haven't noticed? That's a good question. Reduction in cost for Chosen. That's still scary. That's still spooky. And the Knights of Nurgle have also received some buffs. So it looks like Chaos Knights in general have received across the board buffs. Similarly, Forsaken actually haven't received as much of a buff for Nurgle as they did for Khorne. Interesting. Ogre Kingdoms. Ogres haven't been doing too great in battle as of late, so some work is needed to bring them up to scratch. Greasus has had a few token buffs, although we still recognize that we'll likely have to go further. Ogre Pistols and Cavalry. I got a buddy of mine soon who's popped up in a few of the videos on the group channel. He may also be in a few videos I've uploaded on this channel, who despises Greasus because he thinks Greasus is way too slow. So it just gets on his nerves that he is much slower than the rest of his army. Ogre Pistols and Cavalry have received some attention to give them a bit more impact across the board. Artillery has received a maneuverability nerf in exchange for a mass buff to emphasize their role a little bit better. Fixed an issue or camp missions that requires you to kill a character would be locked as incomplete if another faction assassinated your target. Let's see. Yeah, buffs to damage for Cavalry across the board, so it looks like they're going to have a little bit more sustained capability, but you're probably going to want to use them more for cycle charging still. Greasus does look like he's faster. At the very least, he turns faster, which he definitely did need to turn faster. He turns way too slowly. The Gnoblar Scrap Launcher now has more entity mass and less acceleration and less turn speed. So he less capability to just turn him around after a charge and go back in. You have to get some distance out. Okay. Iron Guts get increased melee attack and armor, and a bonus versus infantry of 5. Interesting. So Iron Guts are now an anti-infantry unit. That's weird, because they have great weapons, and usually when a monster has great weapons, that means they're anti-large, not anti-infantry. That's curious. Iron Blasters got a slight cost reduction, and the similar changes that the Scrap Launcher got. Man-eaters with ogre pistols got some buffs to their missile shots. Cavalry changes. Mournfang cavalry have been reduced in cost. That's nice. 100 gold change in multiplayer is nice, and a 25 gold change in campaign is nice. So that's very good to see. Skaven. These changes don't exist, but if they did, they'd go something like this. Poison Wind Globadiers and Mortars have had their AP ratio flattened out a bit, while Doom Wheels, Plague Monks, and Censer Bearers have received some buffs to make them more viable. Added +5 leadership to Rat Ogres to the Skaven. That's a lot of things. Added +5 leadership to Rat Ogres to the Skaven Technology Practice Goaters. The Unclean Energy Bar upgrade is now usable within Thrott's Flesh Laboratory. Fixed an issue with the general Skaven banner texture glow. Fixed a number of cases where effects were being... Okay, I'm just going to have to start skipping over these. There is no time. I haven't even started the actual game yet to look at this. Look at the Chaos Dwarfs. Ah. Yeah, I can't look at all these bug fixes. There are too many. Okay. Yeah, there we go. The Doom Wheel has got some slight buffs. Very nice to see. Considerably increased melee defense. That's nice to see. Poison Wind Mortars, yep, changed the damage just slightly. Yeah, it's a mild change, but I guess it's probably fixing somebody's OCD worries. Plague Monks are now cheaper. A 100 gold cost reduction in multiplayer. That is pretty big in multiplayer. For campaign, not quite so big, but campaign, it's different issues there. Plague Monk Censer Bearers have also had a melee defense increase, and a also very mild decrease in upkeep. Cleansing Rune spell now correctly displays its ability icon in skill trees. Threaded 13th spell now correctly displays its ability icon. Slaanesh has been performing really well for a while thanks to a few cornerstone units. Yeah, I don't pay that much attention to the multiplayer meta, but to my understanding, Slaanesh has been positively broken. Devoted Marauders and Hellstriders have been calmed somewhat, while Demonettes and the Keeper of Secrets have been buffed. Perhaps the biggest change on the Slaanesh roster, however, is the reduction of the physical resistance bonus on all units with the mark of Slaanesh from 10% down to 5%. This should make their mortal front line a little bit less oppressive. Okay, there we go. Why are Devoted Marauders of Slaanesh considered a demonic unit? I guess because the Warriors of Chaos don't get access to them? Huh. But yeah, a increase in price. Oh boy, 500 gold for Devoted Marauders of Slaanesh. That's a lot of money. They've lost their bonus versus infantry. They've lost a little bit of their physical resistance. But they got a little bit of speed for it. Demonettes, increase in leadership armor. It seems like that's just buffs to standard demon units across the board. The Demon Prince of Slaanesh, mild reduction in physical damage resistance. Oh, I've been talking too much. I'm getting tongue-tied. My brain is getting tired. The Exalted Keeper of Secrets has a cost reduction and an armor increase. Yada, yada, yada. Hide and Force has been added to Hellflares and Fiends. Hellstriders, okay, there we go. A reduction in melee attack, and more significantly, a big reduction in bonus versus large. And an increase in recruitment cost. And you can tell that different parts of these patch notes were written at different times. Because here they make the clarification of recruitment cost. SP. Is that single player or is that skirmish battles? Is that skirmish? I don't know. Skirmish play? I don't know. Hellstars of Slaanesh with Hell Scourges have seen a similar kind of nerf. Okay, these are more mild nerfs than I was expecting, actually. I was kind of expecting Slaanesh to get hit with the nerf hammer pretty hard. But no, these are kind of mild nerfs, which is probably fair. You don't want to nerf them too hard to where they just don't get played at all. Especially if Slaanesh is only really reliant on 1 or 2 units, then you are very distinctly in the territory of possibly nerfing Slaanesh out of viability altogether. Which is, of course, the opposite of... which is not what you want to do at all. Yeah, physical damage reductions across the board. And not much else that's really worth talking about other than Chosen, again, getting a reduction in cost. Oh, that's... I don't like it. It's spooky. I don't know. It's probably really not that big. It's just... Chosen are scary, man. Why are the Devoted Marauders... Okay, that was just an error for the first Devoted Marauders of Slaanesh to get put in the wrong category. Demogryph Knights have been the focus of the Empire's changes in this patch. Our metrics show they are underperforming. The community source peer-reviewed suggestions agreed. Buffs were therefore in order. Plus, the Luminarch has received a considerable buff. I've seen that. With its reload time now halved. Yeah, the Luminarch is going to be a much more significant unit now. War Wagon ammunition has been slightly tweaked. War Wagons have 6 gunners, and the unit info panel divides the ammunition by 6 to represent a single volley. The raw ammo number is now also displayed for all of you budding gunnery students out there. The Pig Barter Bridge now acts as a bridge rather than forcing Karl Franz to swim beside it. That is an amusing patch note. The Cult of Sigmar can now correctly confederate with the Empire. Volkmar's Book of Nagash rewards listed in the wrong units as rewards. Nuln Gunnery School now correctly displays all the recruitment options it should. Yeah, we've got more of these changes to speed and unit mass for Pegasus, or Pegasi. Well, no, just Pegasus, probably. Bright Wizards now have flaming attacks. Oh, that's a nice change. That's a nice little change. Okay, here we go. Demogryph Knights. 75 leadership, 40 melee attack, 20 base damage, 40 armor-piercing damage, and more significantly, a much bigger increase in splash attack knockback. Those aren't huge buffs, except the plus 5 leadership is strong for any unit. And splash attack knockbacks, which presumably means that a demogryph charge will now send most infantry units flying. That will be funny to see. Hellblaster volley guns have had a 50 gold reduction in cost. Imperial Pegasus have seen reductions. Yeah, the same changes. And let's see. The Luminarch of Hysh has had a halved reduction time, has less acceleration, more entity mass, less turn speed. I wonder if it's still possible to use the Luminarch of Hysh as a chariot as a joke, though. Because I like to do that for a laugh sometimes, because it was stupid and didn't work, but it was nonetheless funny to see. Buffs to Volkmar on his Pope Mobile, so that's nice to see. War Wagons have had slightly changed ammunition meter changes, just because it looks like a slight reduction in ammunition. And an increase in entity mass across the board for chariots. Doesn't shock me that it applies to War Wagons as well. War Wagons, War Wagons I think are a really funny unit to use as the Empire. I know they're not meta, they're not really good. But I enjoy using the weirder units as the Empire. I don't like just using standard state troops. So, you know, Halberdiers, I think, are the only... Halberdiers and Handgunners and Huntsmen, if you count them. But Halberdiers, Huntsmen, and Handgunners. The 3 H's, I guess. Triple H. Yeah, there you go. The Triple H of the Empire are the only state troop units I really get a kick out of. Other than that, what I really enjoy using on the Empire roster, other than obviously the artillery, which everyone does, are Free Company, War Wagons, Flagellants, the Knights. But, yeah, the standard, you know, swordsmen, crossbowmen, I don't care. They're boring. I don't like it. Buff to the Witch Hunter's armor and reduction in cost. Nice. Tomb Kings. Aren't many changes for the Tomb Kings this time around. Yeah, Tomb Kings are in a pretty happy place for the moment. That landmark they have in the Desert of Araby, though, is nuts and needs to be changed. Perfect Vigor for all Ushabti makes Ushabti absolutely absurd. Aside from the chariot rework, which should help them out a bit across all of their chariot unit mounts, most of the changes are cost or mass related. Yep, just some changes to make chariots better. Slight increase in price as well, but it's not really the end of the world. There we go, yeah, just some very mild changes for the Tomb Kings, yeah. Tzeentch. Tzeentch is another faction that's doing relatively okay across both land battles and domination. I hear they're actually doing pretty poorly in multiplayer. There's a few targeted changes here with Discs receiving more mass, Flamers receiving more projectile velocity, and Chosen becoming a bit cheaper. Updated Kairos is fun. Yeah, there we go. Whatever. Yeah, nothing too exciting here. Same changes across the board here, though the projectiles of the Flamers now will go faster. Yeah, just the same changes across the board. Increased armor and leadership for demons, reduced cost for Chosen, mildly increased stats for Chaos Knights. Same old here. Doom Knights have increased mass. Interesting. Vampire Coast have been doing fairly well, so the changes are focused only on some of their overperforming units. Gunnery Mob now have the standard 90 range for a handgun unit. Did they have more than that? Animated Hulks now receive a considerable change, and Solostra's Knight Errant summon no longer uses Lance Formation. Morn Ghouls have received a bit of a buff across the board, though, with some additional attributes to improve their utility. Vampire Coast pirate ship growth no longer shows as technology in the tooltip breakdown. Price increase for Solostra, reduction. Okay, really, Zombie Pirate Gunnery Mob. 90 range is standard for a handgun. I guess it is. I always think of it as being closer to 120, but no, it probably is. Yeah, that makes more sense for the Vampire Coast to have their guns at a closer range anyways. It's not like you expect zombies to be better at handling the guns than people, even if they are smarter zombies. And some reduction in explosive damage for the zombie grenadiers. Boy, it seems like they just nerfed all of the grenade-using units. I don't know if they, like I said, I don't know if they did that to try and make the naphtha bombs that the Infernal Ironsworn pack more significant, but I don't know, we'll see. And changes to melee attack frequency. I don't know if that was a problem. Yeah, nothing really super significant here, except the Morn Ghouls now get Strider. Interesting. That's cool. Throw on Strider and Stalk, then they are going to be brilliant flankers. They can just go up and down hills at speed and go all up and around your units. Animated Hulks. A mild nerf to melee attack and to armor and to weapon strength. Were Animated Hulks really considered that strong? I thought for the longest time the Animated Hulks were considered far and away the worst unit in the Vampire Coast roster. Of course, I'm not an expert. Vampire counts have been overperforming across the board. These tweaks mainly target healing abilities and crypt horrors, as their combination of regeneration and high HP pool made for a truly formidable unit. Graveguard and Black Knights have also had their magic attacks removed, meaning the vampire counts need to rely more on AoE abilities in order to deal with physical resistance. Fixed an issue of Manfred's Books of Nagash wouldn't upgrade until the following turn. Added a growth building to Gorse starting landmark. Graveguard have lost magical attacks, and so have Black Knights. Yeah, that's not a big surprise. And Crypt Horrors have had a considerable reduction in hit points and melee defense. Okay. Significant, but not a big read. Not too many changes for the Warriors of Chaos Undivided units in this update. The main change here, although changes to mortal units on the other Modern God rosters apply to them, main change here is the base stats of Chaos Knights have been improved as they are underperforming slightly. Dragon Ogres and Shaggoths have also received some buffs so that they are a bit more viable. The Warriors of Chaos Beast building now increases its Forsaken unit capacity. Prevented Warriors of Chaos AI from trying to recruit units in the same region for several successive turns, which resulted in them trying to recruit units which they were unable to. Demon Prince Nurgle of Nurgle colors are no longer misaligned in the 2D porthole. Village's ritual Spawnify no longer exceeds the military force unit limit restriction. That's one of the funniest things that has been put in the game in the last few years. Village just being a weirdo over there. And you can be anywhere on the map. So long as Village is aware of your existence, he's just gonna give you free chaos spawn. I don't know why. He does it to people he hates. It makes no sense. I don't get it. But it's so funny every time to be playing Lizardmen. And you just look at an army and for whatever reason you have chaos spawn as units. And they're just happily hanging out. It makes no sense. I love it. It's especially a thing, if you play Cathay, if you play Xiao Ming or Miao Ying, you'll be getting a lot of free chaos spawn. I don't know why. Like, the only way I could think of that being a downside is that he's adding upkeep for your armies. But other than that, like, it's just funny. It's just one of the strangest things that I've ever seen the AI in Total War do. Removed flame attacks on dragons so that they don't suck against Chaos Dwarfs, yada yada yada. You get the idea here. It's the same old, same old. It's exactly as they said. The Wood Elves. The big change to the Wood Elves this time revolve around Treemen, who are currently underperforming. Treemen have received a buff to their weapon strength, HP, and knockback multiplier. Which means they should be a bit more effective. Oh. Yeah, breakfast is coming back up on me. Which means that they should be a bit more effective in prolonged fights and clear out enemies a bit better. Wild Riders have also received a mass buff, along with some changes to Hawk Riders, which should make them a bit less paper thin in melee. I always thought Hawk Riders were actually kind of okay in melee. I always liked them. I always liked using them to hit the enemy missile units. The Wood Elves is one of the big problems you have to learn to deal with. The Wood Elves, while they have great skirmishing capabilities, are actually terrible at fighting enemy missiles. In a actual shootout, the Wood Elves usually lose. So, one of the things you have to figure out with the Wood Elves is, what is my answer to enemy missiles? So, Glade Riders, Wild Riders, Hawk Riders are all very solid answers. Hawk Riders are my personal favorite, but Wild Riders are, of course, satisfying, because how do you not love a unit that's riding a unit of deer cavalry? Or elk cavalry, whichever it's supposed to be. I don't know. Fixed an issue where Glade Guard buffs weren't being applied to fire and poison variants. Durthu has seen some just mild changes. He's got more AP damage, he's got better splash attacks, and he does mildly more damage to buildings. Coadil has seen similar changes. So probably can just expect that across the board for all tree men. Yeah. Just changes the damage, more armor piercing, more splash attacks, more health. Exactly as they said. The same kind of changes we've been expecting for the Unicorns and Pegasus from Bretonia has been made here as well. Increased mass for the Stag units. And for the Wild Riders. Excellent. And Hawk Riders have had a mild cost increase to make up for a buff from 25 to 30 melee attack. That's very nice. From 18 to 24 melee defense. That's very nice. Charge bonus from 42 to 46. Excellent. Yeah, gonna be a lot of meaty charges on our flyers, I feel. And they now have woodsmen, so they don't slow down when they're walking through the woods. Zotes have got a 10 leadership buff. That's kind of odd. Alright, general campaign changes. Fixed an issue where gold is being awarded to a mission target, such as the settlement being attacked or the faction having war declared against it, instead of the mission owner. That's funny. You do a mission and it gives the money to the guy. That's funny. Updated campaign map battle selection for both Realm of Chaos and Immortal Empires. Fixed a potential soft lock after embedding a Frost Maiden into your army during the prologue. Realm of Chaos, some changes. I don't care. I'm never going to play Realm of Chaos again. In cases where a faction had mission-driven Confederation, a small boost has been applied to the Confederated faction, making it less likely to die before the player can complete the mission. Excellent. And some battle changes. New endless survival battles. Yes, I saw this as part of the Mirror of Madness, and I was very curious what this would look like. Hold out against growing waves of enemies in 25 new endless survival battles. It's a more casual, cooperative battle experience. Each one represents a different race and can be accessed from the custom battle and multiplayer menus. These battles can be played solo or co-op with up to 4 players. Okay, that sounds awesome. Enemies will periodically spawn and attack you, featuring every unit from the chosen enemy race. Every unit? Oh, God, the Lizardmen. Oh, God, the Demons of Chaos. Ooh, there are some of the races that would be scarier. The question here is, how much onus does this also put on the modders to make ones for, like... is Cataph now expected to make an endless survival battle for the Southern Realms? Difficulty is scaled based on both player count and time survived. These battles cannot be won. Each map has 3 capture points, with one starting within the player's deployment. Each capture point gives you supplies that can be used on reinforcements, upgrade, and replenishments. Okay, so this has explicitly got, like, Gears of War Horde mode. And I will not complain because I love Horde mode. And here we see an endless survival battle with the greenskins, and it's the dwarfs. Okay, you still pick your army selection, and that's a pretty beefy army selection. Dev note, we're always looking at how our battle maps can be improved. To do this, we had a quality assurance sweep of the many maps in Warhammer 3, and have tracked down some of the problems afflicting these play spaces. Below is a comprehensive list of the changes made so far. Some deal with graphics and audio, while others tackle collision that were causing units and or even the camera to get stuck. As always, we'll be keeping a close eye on the areas of these areas of the game, so please keep your feedback coming. Ambush battles. Resolved an issue with Ulthwyn Ravine ambush battles where units you control are hidden. Updated and correct. Oh, wow, okay, these are a lot of changes to specific maps. And they did fix issues with floating assets. I have noticed that being an issue on several maps. But in particular, I can't immediately recall any maps that I had a specific issue with. And, oh, they did add some assets to some Darklands maps. Makes sense. You need to, right now they're just kind of, well, not right now. Actually, right now, the Chaos Dwarf update is already released. But before, all the Darklands maps were just Nevada. And now they've added, you know, actual Chaos Dwarf assets to make them look as industrialized as they should. Okay. Yeah, just a lot of what I really want, and I know it can't happen because it's there for a reason, but I'd love for some of the cliffs. There are some cliffs on some of the Total War Warhammer maps that look like they should be great places to deploy missile units for them to shoot from, but the collision is actually set up as such where the unit will have to deploy back like 100 feet from the cliff, the side of the cliff, the edge of the cliff. God, I can't think of words anymore. Just getting entirely tongue twisted by how much I'm talking here. Boy, I'm a little bit of a chatterbox when it comes to these things. But you want to deploy a missile unit at the edge of a cliff for them to shoot downwards upon the peons beneath them. But most cliff edges are specifically set up with a collision box that make it where you can't. Where it's just unplayable space on the edge of the cliff. And that annoys me, but I know it's got to be there for a reason, in large part unit collision, and probably the same issue people have with the Rice terraces in Cathay killing people with fall damage. But yeah, it looks like just big map changes all the way around. Fix some floating assets, thank God, because there were some really goofy looking ones. Fix some pathing on minor settlements. Updated and corrected AI graphs. Yeah, it just looks like a lot of nice all-around changes. Stopped settlement wall towers from dealing damage to their own walls and gatehouses. I forgot that was a thing. That's funny. Yeah, just all-around nice changes. Excellent. And the other significant battle changes. The reinforcement panel in domination and survival battles is now able to be repositioned. Thank God. Teleport withdrawal time has been changed from 3 seconds to 10 seconds. Also, thank God, there was an exploit. You could exploit that pretty easily to get units out of bad situations they shouldn't have been able to get out of. Reinforcement resummoning time, 30 seconds to 45 seconds. Yeah, it's slow. It's pretty slow to get your reinforcements in the battle and domination already. I don't know how big of a change that's going to be for those guys. For survival battles, though, it won't matter. Fixed players gaining an unfair advantage in multiplayer battles by modifying the UI through a movie pack. That's interesting. Fixed riders on war machines from shooting the primary missile weapon of the unit when they weren't supposed to. Okay, so yeah, so on and so forth. And they have added some maps to the quick battle rotation. That's not important for me. I don't do that. And changes to the systems that support and enhance the overall gameplay. Okay, articulated vehicle collision overhaul. So this was the question with the Chaos Dwarf trains, wasn't it? Of how this will look. Okay. Articulated vehicle collision is getting a rework. This affects all units that pivot when turning, such as chariots and war wagons. Previously, the effective collision of an articulated vehicle was governed by a single collision volume. The area or block that other blocks can collide with. This meant that when an articulated unit, such as a chariot, was turning or colliding with enemies, the logical collision was not represented by the actual 3D unit visuals. The long-time players reading this may remember that we attempted to fix this back in Warhammer 2 during the Silence and the Fury DLC, temporarily leading to some very overpowered Tuscarora and Razorgore chariots. I don't remember that being a particular issue, but I guess I don't pay that much attention to the meta. Also, I find it funny they call it long-time players. Silence and the Fury only released a little bit over a year ago. To explain the new behavior, it's first important to explain how articulated vehicle collision worked prior to the change in the problems this caused. First off, the vehicles are split into 4 main components. The articulated entity. This is the main controller for all the separate components of the vehicle, tying everything together. It governs the logic for things like collision, movements, attacks. It has no visual representation. Mount, the animal that pulls the vehicle, naturally. Engine, the vehicle that is being pulled by the mounts. Rider, the additional entity that is riding upon the engine. Prior to this change, the articulated entity alone was colliding with friendly and enemy units. So it was just in the invisible hitbox. Okay. This meant that the collision block had to be relatively large and encompass the entire unit to make the collision fair. The other collision volumes of the mount, rider, and engines were used only for colliding with incoming projectiles. This led to problems when these units are attempting to turn, as seen in this image. Okay, I see. So that would lead to blocking chariots from pulling out. So it made it more difficult when you had a chariot stuck in to pull it out. The large white box in this image is the articulated entity collision area. Because this was the only part of the vehicle that collided with other units, these units experienced difficulties when turning while surrounded in melee, ultimately leading to situations where they would get stuck. Yes, and a lot of the art of using chariots in Total War Warhammer has been trying to specifically order the units in such a way where they will go cleanly through the unit I keep forgetting I'm having a war crime. Yes, I'm having a war crime. No, I'm having a webcam. I am brain tired. Yeah, the art of using chariot units was trying to guide their charge so that they would pierce straight through the enemy unit and not have to turn. That way you could get them some distance behind the enemy unit after charging them from the front and piercing through, so that once they get some distance away, they can turn around and come back in for a rear charge, depending on what units you've got distracting the enemy unit, if you have any distracting them at all, because chariots can afford to make frontal charges a lot better than cavalry can, since they can pierce right through the enemy armies a lot easier. Though now with significantly increased significantly increased entity mass, and with this change to collision, that will make chariots just all around way better, and I'm very excited to play around with them as toys in the game once I am done making this video. Sometime in the future, I'm planning, it's like an investment. I think maybe I'll get done with this video by the time that I collect my retirement. Okay, but nonetheless, this will make chariots way easier to use. So that's good to hear, because chariots right now are one of the bigger examples in Total War of kind of I don't want to say an expert unit, because that makes it sound like it's a really difficult to understand concept. It's not really. But a very micro-heavy unit. And if you weren't a micromanagement master, then it could be an issue. Alright. In patch 3.0, the articulated entity, mount, and engine collisions all work in conjunction when colliding with enemy units. To illustrate, here's a comparison of the effective collision setup of a Cold One chariot in 3.0 compared to the previous iteration. In this image, the effective collision in melee is circled. This is the collision which is applied in a melee situation. Excellent. Okay, I see. So yeah, it just sounds better. As you can see, the vehicle is a lot more representative of its visual model when executing a turn. This helps articulated vehicles out when moving through enemy units, but also presents more opportunities for enemies to attack as well, since they are also now able to attack any part of the effective collision instead of attempting to crowd around and hit a single collision block. Right, because it used to be with chariots that you would see the enemies crowd around and try to hit the horse, which was a little bit dopey, whereas now they'll actually try and hit the people riding the chariot as well. Overall, this change is far-reaching in scope, but also solves a long-standing invisible and overall negative element for articulated units. We will, of course, monitor how it works and tweak where necessary. So they had to make this change with the Chaos Dwarf specifically, because not just because this whole issue would have been a lot more awkward with the Chaos Dwarf trains being bigger than any other chariots we've got before, but it specifically had to be an issue because of this whole articulated hitbox here of the Chaos Dwarf train that people will probably be thinking of as the distinctive train unit, which is the one with the Dreadquake mortar attached to the back. It would be very goofy if the enemy units were only trying to attack the train engine in front and entirely ignoring the Dreadquake mortar attached to the back. So, because with such an extraordinary size, it would have become a lot more noticeable that the enemies were not bothering to attack the Dreadquake mortar. Whereas you can kind of ignore or just not notice at all, for instance with an old school chariot, that they were ignoring the chariot itself and only hitting the horse. The lore of fire has been completely overhauled, with every spell in the lore receiving new visual effects and audio treatments. Highlights include the Flaming Sword of Ruin, which now features an actual sword, and the Towering Flamestorm, which tumbles around the battlefield, dealing a fiery welcome to anything that crosses its path. That's cool. If a unit has flaming or magical attacks imbued on either their melee or missile weapon, they will now spawn minor VFX on afflicted enemies to telegraph it. That's cool. And we got some graphics changes. Oh boy. And a lot of these are going to be, wow, there's a lot of changes. Chariots no longer clip through each other. Characters no longer vibrate with excitement when clicking on their character flag during movement. They're so happy, though. Fixed terrain hole issues within the technical camera view. Floating assets, smooth terrain, Norskin monster hunt. Hoo boy, a lot of these are just... yeah, just not big changes, but a lot of changes here. So, a lot of color changes misaligned in the 2D porthole I'm seeing here. Heh. Tidied up some visual effects for the hull cannons. I hope they've up-res the textures on the Chaos Dwarf Siege Engineers. Because it was very noticeable when you zoomed in on the Chaos Dwarfs engineers running the Hell Cannon in the Warriors of Chaos. It was very noticeable that they had very low-res textures, and they looked a bit ugly. Which is kind of disappointing, because for Warhammer 1 released in 2016, didn't it? No, 2017. No, 2016. Yes, 2016, because I was playing Warhammer 2 in 2017. Warhammer 1 came out in 2016, so 7 years ago now. For 7 years, the only Chaos Dwarf asset in the game was kind of ugly. Fixed various Tomb King... Just a lot of stuff. Reduced the scale of some oversized Norskin and Lizardman assets. I don't know what they're talking about, but the idea of a giant Lizardman is pretty funny. Or a giant Norskin. What am I saying? All Norskins are giants. Yeah, this is a lot of small stuff that I can't really speak too much to. There's a couple graphics issues I could think of that I think are pretty annoying. But a lot of them are just simply cases of Warhammer 1 having really low resolution on a lot of textures. The Empire and the Dwarfs both have really hideous textures on their artillery, for instance. But really, like, the Warriors of Chaos got a graphical overhaul with the Champions of Chaos DLC. And I think really most of the Warhammer 1 races could stand to have similar visual overhauls. Bretonia, I think, is in a good place visually. Norska is in a good place visually. The Wood Elves have very obviously low-resolution textures when you take a close look at them. But in terms of unit design and a lot of visuals, they look, it's not really until you zoom in on them. Beastmen look great. The only issue I have with the Beastmen is that there's an odd thing that every gore is missing one eye. And I don't mean missing as in like the eye is gone. Every gore is noticeably blind in one eye. If you look at their irises, they'll have one eye that's normal and it's got the usual Beastman kind of rectangular pupil. Then the other one will be blinded. And it's a different eye on each gore. But I always thought that was odd. And I don't think it was an accident. Considering Warhammer 1 was developed in a very weird style. And particularly back then in Warhammer 1, you would only have one Beastman faction, headed by Khazrak, in the campaign. I'm inclined to say there was probably some kind of weird thing in Warhammer 1 of... The Beastmen were probably initially designed in Warhammer 1 to just be Khazrak's faction. Malagor and Morgur weren't planned to come in there. Just going by the fact that Khazrak is famously Khazrak One Eye, Boris Todbringer took one, my guess is that back then they intended for all of the Beastmen in Khazrak's army to have one eye, just like he does. And that obviously got killed apparently sometime early in the Beastmen's development, because every other unit has mostly two eyes. And Malagor and Morgur are both right there, though Morgur, of course, came later. But you can still see, it still seems to me that that was the case, because it's just so weird for all of the Gores to be missing one eye each. It's so bizarre. Nonetheless, it's again a thing you don't really notice unless you're paying particularly close attention. Some audio bugs were also fixed. And I don't know any particular audio bugs that I would be looking for either. And there is a new missile block icon. It now uses a single unified icon that better fits the game's overall style. More significantly, I need to say this as someone who remembers their time as a Total War Warhammer noob. Because a lot of people don't remember their time as a Total War Warhammer noob, apparently. A lot of people don't remember their time as a noob in any game, whether it's out of pride or just simply forgetting. When I was a Total War Warhammer noob, I thought that shield icon meant that they had high armor. I did not know that that meant that they have a shield for blocking missiles. Because at the time, it didn't even occur to me I could mouse over icons. Now, is it silly that I didn't know I could mouse over icons? Yes, it was silly. But nonetheless, these things should have some degree of immediate clarity. And just having a bronze or silver or the rare forbidden gold shield icon on the unit card is not as clear as it really should have been. Now, the addition of the arrow into the shield makes it clear, okay, that's the point of the shield. These guys have the ability to resist missiles from the front. That makes it clear. The decision to get rid of bronze, silver, and gold shields... Oh, bronze, silver, and gold shields will still be displayed separately. Where? I haven't seen that on any of the unit cards. Whatever. We'll see it when we see it. I still think the bronze, silver, gold shield split is a little bit weird, though. Because off the top of my head, there are actually 2 units in the game that have shields, but they're actually worse than bronze. Like, if you could make a tin shield icon, they would have that. Which are the Slayers and, I believe, the Swordmasters of Hoth. Because both of them don't actually have shields, per se. They are deflecting the projectiles, including seemingly bullets, out of the air with their weapons, which, of course, is more than a little bit absurd that the Slayers can do that. Swordmasters, I can accept. Okay, they've spent thousands of years in training. They have really honed their weirdo elven magic weave senses or whatever. So I can accept a little bit more that an elf can, through extraordinary discipline and practice and preparation that would probably take hundreds of years of training on its own, be able to deflect a bullet. Maybe. No, even then, no, it's too silly. But the idea of them deflecting arrows is still really cool. Nonetheless, the bronze shield amount is 35% missile resist. Silver shield is 55 missile resist. Gold shield, I don't know what the threshold is for gold missile resist. But I believe Slayers and Swordmasters of Hoth, while they have the bronze shield icon, they do not have 35% missile resist from the front. They have 15% missile resist from the front, which is a significant difference. UI! Sticky tooltips have been added to a large number of game elements, most notably technology, skills, building, and unit cards. These new tooltips allow you to inspect their elements once they have stuck. Inspectable elements within these tooltips will be denoted with an eye icon. The timings for sticky tooltips appearing, sticking, and hiding can be modified in the options menu. That was, dude, when I first saw those sticky tooltips in Crusader Kings 3, I lost my mind. I just went, this changes everything. So seeing that in Total War, that's great. Because there's some stuff in Total War, especially when you're a new player, you open a tooltip, and it's just like, buffs this and this and that and this and that. And I'm just sitting there, you're just sitting there as a new player like, what are these? What are these mechanics? Who are these units? What is a Ho Master of Swords? Alright, plus tooltips for effects that apply to specific units now to display the unit cards of the relevant units. That one is really cool, but that one could be a problem for races that have a lot of units that get buffed by a particular thing. And you open the tooltip and you just see this long bar going off the screen of unit cards. Added enable all and disable all buttons to the campaign notifications menu. Interesting. So if you want to go with old school Rome 1, Medieval 2 times of just getting no notifications, that's an option, I guess. Campaign race list now fills rows first instead of columns. This is to make it consistent with other race lists in the unit browser and the custom battle. Okay, that makes sense, because you kind of had to change your mind. If you were used to looking through the unit encyclopedia or the custom battle menu or the multiplayer battle menu, you kind of had to readjust the way your mind worked when you're looking at the campaign race menu because it was arranged in a different weird way. Fixed missing icons during the barricade loading screen hints. There are a lot of loading screen hints that need to be changed. I want to say there are several loading screen hints that are in Warhammer 3 that are just outright incorrect because they haven't been changed since Warhammer 2. Warhammer 2 near the end got really ridiculous for, it provided loading screen hints for the greenskin wall mechanic or greenskin fightingness mechanic that no longer existed. Or similarly, would provide tips for the beastmen that were entirely incorrect. So they could probably stand to fix a few loading screen hints. But at the same time, that's just kind of a low priority, because does it really bother anything? Should you be really wasting one of the developers' time with it? You know, you can probably put your time and efforts elsewhere. Oh, that's the issues of game development, though. Fixed an issue where event notifications were being prevented from displaying until you fix. Okay, it's a lot of bug fixes here. Required content tooltips have been given the sticky tooltip treatment. The sticky tooltip treatment. If I was less tongue-tied, I would have been able to hit that a lot easier. Nice phrase, though. Timed mission rewards with 10 or more turns are no longer cut off. Wasn't even aware that was an issue. And yeah, just a lot of UI fixes. There we go. All legendary heroes now display their bespoke short description when recruiting. I wonder what that means. Rank elements no longer overlap character portraits in the event list. Blah, blah, blah. Winds of Magic reserve capacity is now shown in tooltips. Curious. I wonder what that looks like. Miscast chance bonuses are now correctly shown in the battle UI. That's a big help, because miscast, sometimes you are getting big miscast buffs or nerfs that you should be aware of and you aren't entirely. Number of settlements owned is now displayed when interacting with factions in diplomacy. Oh, thank God. This is such a minor thing, but whenever I'm making diplomatic deals or trying to accept or reject a diplomatic deal, I really want to see how strong they are. How many settlements do you have? And it was so annoying that you couldn't, that you had to back out to the main diplomacy menu in order to see that. So that is very, very nice. Fix the demolished building tooltip showing the incorrect text. Right, that one's been goofy for a little bit. Because right now, not right now. Before, the demolished tooltip said that it would cost you money to break a building. When actually, it gives you money if you break a building. If you had to pay to break a building, then my God, demolishing would be terrible, and it would be such a commitment to make any building. Getting ambushed by a military force with a law army will no longer show the ambush or discovered event twice. That one's pretty funny. I've never seen that, but that's funny. And let's see. Fix the character details panel, sometimes not closing when pressing escape key. That's nice. Norska Monstrous Arcanum now can be closed with the escape key. That's a nice quality of life. Story panels can now be reviewed from the movie viewer, which have been renamed to the narrative viewer to better reflect its intended purpose. Added 11 new achievements centered around the Free Mirror of Madness DLC. Adjusted Polish localizations, updated parchment map name positions for the Abyssal Glacier and Southern Wastes for all languages, removed irrelevant and incorrect faction text, yada yada yada, so on and so forth. Okay, here we go. Up next. Jesus. Get a little bit sick, I guess. And that's all she wrote. Compiling this has taken years off of our lives. Writing patch notes, a lot of people don't understand how much of a pain it is to write patch notes. Especially trying to put together... Like, I can't speak from experience, because I've never been a game developer. But when you understand what actually goes into this, the process of trying to get together every single change that's been made on the patch by every single developer, and not just using developer tickets as the patch notes, because some devs do that with the patches, and it results in patch notes being kind of difficult to understand. And making it funny, which Crave Assembly likes to do. Writing patch notes is hard, man. We thank you for joining us on this voyage. Apologies to the vocal cords of any who foolishly chose to verbalize these patch notes. Apology accepted. However, this is just the start of the Update 3.0 story. We shall be keeping a close eye on your feedback and can in fact confirm that Update 3.1 is actually very rapidly approaching. We will call that the Bull Centaur nerf patch. Because as hard to believe as it is, we've actually got more stuff ready to deploy than we can fit into this release. That presumably will be some mild bug fixes, some buffs and nerfs for the Chaos Dwarfs, and probably the last Regiment of Renown pack for the core races, right? We shan't go into the details here, as, well, we've surely had our fill by now, but expect yet more fixed-based wholesomeness when Update 3.1 arrives in a few weeks. That's a commitment, guys. I wouldn't have said a few weeks there. I would have said when Update 3.1 arrives and just finish the sentence there. Because people will get mad if that doesn't arrive in a few weeks. You could tell somebody they're going to get a penny next week. It doesn't matter how small or big the promise is. If he doesn't get that penny next week, he's mad. Or, well, on an individual level, people don't get that mad over that. But on a community level, Crave Assembly could say, hey, we're going to release an update 3 weeks from now that will do literally nothing except reduce Grail Knight melee attack by 1. If they don't get that update, people get mad. Nonetheless, so please, you've come this far, let's complete our journey by jumping into Warhammer 3 and giving the myriad of new features, adjustments, and updates a spin. I certainly will. From everyone on the Total War Warhammer team, thank you for your patience and support, whether you've been with us since the start, or you're a new addition to the family. We still have plenty more to come for Warhammer 3, and as always, we'll keep you updated as the journey continues. See you on the battlefield. The Total War team. Yeah, it seems like a nice, beefy update. Not a lot of balance changes that I'm super, excited to try out, other than the Chariot change is going to be a big one, and I'm excited to play with Bretonia's newly enhanced toys. Grail Guardians and Pegasus Knights both seem like they're going to be disgusting now. The Luminarch change for the Empire is also a big one, though. And dwarfs in general being more resistant to missiles should make their battles a little more easier. Though in campaign they still have so many difficulties. Nonetheless, I am definitely very excited to cut this recording and get to play with the Chaos Dwarfs more than anything else, but also I'd love to see the Mirror of Madness stuff, the endless survival battles, and see how that is. So I will be going ahead and wrapping up this video and uploading it at a remarkable 2 hours and 20 minutes. It's not normal to spend that much time on patch notes. I guess I'm not normal. Nonetheless, I will see you folks later.